Stone doesn't remember hands, yet these stones bear the mark of minds that measured the world with unsettling precision. Long before steel tools or modern math, massive structures rose, aligned to stars, cardinal directions, and forces we're still trying to understand. How did ancient builders shape and place multi-ton blocks so flawlessly? What knowledge guided their angles, their symmetry, their silence? As we scan windswept plateaus, carved bedrock, and joints tighter than a blade's edge, the question deepens. Coincidence, lost science, or something we've overlooked entirely? This is a journey through 3 hours of prehistoric discoveries that challenge our assumptions. So sit back, relax, and let's dive in. Rising quietly from the highlands of West Java, Gunung Padang sits wrapped in mist and forest, its dark stone terraces blending almost seamlessly with the surrounding earth. From a distance, it appears like a natural hill, unassuming and ancient. Up close, the ground tells a different story. Thousands of carefully arranged andesite columns form stepped platforms that climb the slope with deliberate geometry. The stones are cool to the touch, weathered and heavy with time, as if the hill itself has been shaped by human intent. For decades, Gunung Padang was understood as a megalithic site, an elevated place of ritual built by ancient communities who inhabited the region thousands of years ago. Archaeologists identified it as a terraced structure, likely constructed around 2000 to 5000 BC, consistent with other known megalithic traditions in Indonesia. Stone arrangements, orientation, and surface features supported this view. A ceremonial complex, modified over generations, used for gatherings, offerings, or social rites. Yet even within these mainstream interpretations, questions lingered. The scale of the site is unusual. The precision with which the columns are aligned feels intentional beyond simple stacking. The terraces seem to follow a broader plan, one that suggests careful surveying and long-term construction. Why build such an elaborate structure on a remote volcanic hill? And why here? In the early 21st century, Gunung Padang entered a more controversial phase of study. Geophysical surveys, using ground-penetrating radar, electrical resistivity, and core drilling, hinted at subsurface anomalies beneath the visible terraces. Some researchers proposed that what appears on the surface might be only the uppermost layer of a far more complex structure. Core samples taken from deeper levels were interpreted by some as evidence of human-modified layers far below the ground, potentially dating back as far as 10,000 BC or earlier. These claims, if true, would dramatically alter our understanding of early human societies. Such dates would place construction at a time when humans were widely believed to be hunter-gatherers, not builders of large-scale stone complexes. Could organized construction, planning, and symbolic architecture have emerged far earlier than currently accepted? Or are these subsurface features simply natural formations, shaped by volcanic processes and later misinterpreted? Critics urge caution. Dating methods applied to sediment rather than worked stone can be misleading. Natural fractures in columnar basalt can resemble human construction. Geological hills can produce layered patterns that appear artificial under certain scans. From this perspective, Gunung Padang may represent a powerful example of how nature and human modification can blur together, challenging interpretation without rewriting history. Still, the questions persist. Local traditions speak of the hill as a place of power, associated with ancestral figures and forgotten knowledge. Legends describe Gunung Padang as unfinished, abandoned when something went wrong, or sealed long ago. While such stories are not evidence, they reflect a long-standing sense that the site holds meaning beyond what is visible. What makes Gunung Padang compelling is not a single theory, but the tension between them. It stands at the intersection of geology, archaeology, and human imagination. Each new survey adds detail, but also complexity. Each explanation answers one question while raising another. Is Gunung Padang a remarkable ceremonial site from Indonesia's known past, gradually expanded over centuries? Or does it conceal deeper layers that point to a chapter of human history not yet fully understood? Beneath the moss-covered stones and silent terraces, something endures, an unresolved story, waiting patiently, as it has for thousands of years. As the mystery of Gunung Padang lingers, its terraces fading back into mist and unanswered questions, we move westward, following the same faint trail of early human ingenuity. Different land, different stone, yet the same quiet defiance of time. Here, in the rolling plains north of Aleppo, another site waits patiently, its secrets buried beneath layers of earth and assumption. Tel Caramel rises subtly from the landscape, a low mound shaped by centuries of wind, sediment, and human presence. At first glance, it appears unremarkable, one of many tells scattered across the Near East. But as excavations slowly peeled back its surface, archaeologists encountered something unexpected. Circular stone towers, carefully constructed, long predating what history once considered the dawn of monumental architecture. The towers of Tel Caramel are not massive by later standards, yet their significance lies in their age and precision. Built from stone, with deliberate circular plans and internal organization, they date to roughly 10,500 to 9,000 BC. This places them in the pre-pottery Neolithic period, a time when human societies were thought to be largely transitional, experimenting with settlement, agriculture, and social structure, but not yet capable of complex construction. And yet, here they are. Each tower is distinct, but consistent in concept. Stone walls curve inward with intention. Internal features suggest controlled access, perhaps even staged movement. These are not random piles of rock. They required planning, labor coordination, and a shared purpose. The builders understood geometry well enough to shape circles, one of the most structurally and symbolically demanding forms, without metal tools or written plans. Mainstream archaeology offers cautious interpretations. The towers may have served as communal structures, spaces for gatherings, storage, or shared rituals. Some suggest defensive functions, though their scale and placement complicate that idea. Others propose that they were markers of social cohesion, built not for survival alone, but for meaning. In a world where permanent settlement was still a new experiment, architecture itself may have been a statement. We are here, and we intend to remain. Yet even these explanations leave gaps. Why towers? Why circles? And why invest such effort at a time when survival itself demanded constant attention? The stones of Tel Caramel were not merely stacked. They were selected, shaped, and placed with care. Some towers appear to have been rebuilt multiple times, as if maintaining their form was as important as their function. This persistence hints at significance beyond the practical. More speculative interpretations emerge quietly, often at the edges of academic discussion. Some researchers wonder whether these towers played a role in early astronomical observation, their shapes and alignments responding to the sky rather than the ground. Others suggest symbolic boundaries, structures meant to organize space, time, or belief in ways we no longer recognize. In early human communities, architecture may have been less about shelter and more about orientation, placing humanity within a larger, unseen order. There is also the question of knowledge transmission. The precision seen at Tel Caramel does not appear in isolation. Similar circular structures emerge later at other sites across the region, including Göbekli Tepe. Were these towers part of a shared architectural tradition? If so, how was that knowledge preserved and passed on without writing? Through ritual, through apprenticeship, or through something more subtle, cultural memory embedded in practice rather than record? Skeptics caution against reading too much into stone. Circular forms can arise naturally from practical building constraints. Stone towers, they argue, need not imply advanced theory, only repetition, experience, and time. And yet, repetition itself raises questions. These were not one-off experiments. They were deliberate choices made again and again. What makes Tel Qaramel especially intriguing is its quietness. Unlike more famous prehistoric sites, it does not announce itself with scale or decoration. There are no carved animals, no towering pillars. Instead, there is restraint, precision without display, complexity without spectacle. It suggests a culture confident enough in its purpose that it did not need to impress, only to endure. As layers of habitation accumulated over millennia, the towers were buried, forgotten, and built over. Life moved on, civilizations rose and fell, and the stones waited. Only recently have they re-emerged, not as answers, but as questions carved into the ground. What did these towers mean to the people who built them? Were they practical, symbolic, or something in between? And how many similar structures remain undiscovered, hidden beneath fields and hills, silently reshaping our understanding of when and why humans first began to build with such intention? Tel Qaramel does not demand conclusions. It invites patience. And in its weathered curves and ancient stone, it leaves us with a familiar thought, one that echoes across every site we've explored so far. Perhaps the origins of precision, planning, and purpose run far deeper than we once believed. From the quiet stone circles of Tel Qaramel, where early towers hinted at humanity's first experiments with organized space, the trail continues northwest, into the wide, fertile plains of Eastern Europe. Here, the mystery shifts in scale, not upward into towers, but outward, across the land itself. What emerges is not a single structure, but entire settlements, vast, carefully planned, and unsettlingly precise. The Cucuteni Mega-Settlements reveal themselves slowly. From ground level, there is little to see. Gentle rises in the earth, fragments of fired clay, traces of ancient hearths scattered beneath farmland. But from above, from aerial surveys and satellite imagery, a startling pattern appears. Perfectly ordered rings of houses, arranged in concentric circles, sometimes stretching more than a kilometer across. Streets curve with intention. Neighborhoods repeat with rhythm. The land itself seems measured. These settlements belong to the Cucuteni Tripilia culture, flourishing roughly between 5,400 and 2,700 BC across what is now modern-day Romania, Moldova, and Ukraine. For decades, they were thought to be modest farming villages, small, dispersed communities living close to the soil. That understanding changed when large-scale surveys revealed their true size. Some sites appear to have housed tens of thousands of people, rivaling, or even exceeding, the populations of early Mesopotamian cities. And yet, these were not cities as we know them. There are no palaces, no temples rising above the rest, no visible fortifications. Instead, the Cucuteni settlements unfold with a strange uniformity. Houses were built to similar dimensions, using timber frames and clay walls arranged in repeating arcs. At the center, open communal spaces suggest shared activity rather than centralized authority. The planning feels deliberate but not hierarchical, ordered but not oppressive. Mainstream archaeology interprets these settlements as the product of gradual growth. As populations increased, communities expanded outward, maintaining circular layouts for social cohesion and practical movement. The repeated rebuilding of houses, often in the same footprint, created layered mounds over time. Agriculture supported large populations, while shared cultural norms kept the settlements coherent. But questions remain. How did societies without writing, metal tools, or formal governance coordinate construction on such a scale? Laying out a settlement of this size requires foresight, an understanding of spacing, access, and long-term use. The precision of the concentric rings suggests more than organic growth. It suggests planning. And then there is the fire. Nearly all Cucuteni settlements show evidence of deliberate, large-scale burning. Entire villages appear to have been destroyed by fire, again and again, often after only a few decades of occupation. The clay walls were fired until they hardened, preserving impressions of wood and woven structures within them. Some researchers argue this was accidental, the result of hearths and densely packed houses. Others see intention, ritualized destruction, renewal through fire. Why would a society invest so much effort into building immense settlements, only to burn them down? Some interpretations frame this as a cultural cycle: construction, habitation, and ceremonial closure. Fire may have marked the end of a settlement's life, transforming homes into memory. In this view, destruction was not failure, but fulfillment. A controlled ending embedded with meaning. More speculative ideas quietly circulate alongside these interpretations. A few researchers wonder whether the circular layouts held symbolic or cosmological significance, echoing cycles of time, seasons, or celestial motion. The settlement's orientation, spacing, and repetition invite comparison to patterns seen in ritual landscapes elsewhere, though direct evidence remains elusive. Others ask whether these mega-settlements truly housed their maximum estimated populations at any one time. Were they fully occupied cities, or seasonal gathering places, swelling and shrinking with ritual calendars? If so, the precision of their layout takes on a different meaning, not urban sprawl, but choreography. Still, the most puzzling aspect may be what is absent. There is little evidence of social stratification. Graves do not reveal stark differences in wealth. Artifacts, pottery, figurines, tools show remarkable consistency across households. Power, if it existed, left few marks. How did such large communities maintain order without visible elites? Was authority distributed, or expressed in ways we no longer recognize? The Cucuteni people left behind exquisite pottery, decorated with swirling red, black, and white patterns. Spirals repeat endlessly, turning inward and outward as if motion itself was sacred. These designs mirror the settlements below, circles within circles, movement without beginning or end. Whether coincidence or expression, the parallel is difficult to ignore. Eventually, the mega-settlements vanished. Around 3000 BC, the Cucuteni Tripilia culture faded, replaced by new populations and new ways of life. Climate shifts, resource pressure, migration, each offers a partial explanation. But no single cause fully accounts for the disappearance of such an organized, expansive society. Today, the land above these settlements is quiet. Fields stretch where neighborhoods once stood. Roads cut across ancient rings without noticing them. Only from the sky do the patterns reemerge, as if the past reveals itself only when we step back far enough. Were the Cucuteni mega-settlements an early experiment in large-scale human cooperation, one that succeeded briefly, without kings or walls? Or do they point to a form of social organization we have yet to fully understand? Beneath the soil, the geometry remains, waiting, asking whether precision itself may have been one of humanity's earliest shared languages. From the vast circular order of the Cucuteni mega-settlements, where entire landscapes were shaped by human coordination and shared intent, the journey now carries us south, across mountains and sea, to an island long regarded as a crossroads of the ancient world. Here in northern Sardinia rises a structure that feels strangely out of place, as if a fragment of another tradition had been set down and left behind. Monte Tchogha stands alone on a gentle plain near the coast, its silhouette unmistakable. A massive, stepped platform ascends toward the sky, reached by a long, straight ramp of stone. Weathered by millennia of wind and rain, its shape remains deliberate and imposing. There is no practical shelter here, no enclosure for daily life. This is not a home. It is something else entirely. Archaeologists date the earliest phase of Monte Tchogha to around 4000 BC during the Neolithic period. Later modifications continued into roughly 2800 BC. The structure was built in stages, each layer carefully placed atop the last, transforming an earlier platform into a more monumental form. Stone blocks were transported, shaped, and aligned with purpose. The ramp, an architectural choice both rare and demanding, suggests movement was meant to be ceremonial, not incidental. At first glance, comparisons come easily. The stepped profile evokes images of Mesopotamian ziggurats, monumental temple platforms found far to the east. Yet Monte Tchogha stands thousands of kilometers away, separated by sea, time, and culture. No direct evidence confirms contact between Sardinia's Neolithic inhabitants and early civilizations of the Near East. And still, the resemblance lingers, raising questions that refuse simple answers. Mainstream archaeology offers grounded interpretations. Monte Tchogha is widely understood as a ritual altar or ceremonial platform, perhaps a place where offerings were made, gatherings held, or symbolic acts performed. Excavations around the site uncovered animal bones, pottery fragments, and standing stones, hinting at repeated use over generations. Nearby menhirs and carved stones suggest a ritual landscape rather than an isolated monument. The ramp itself may have guided processions upward, drawing participants from the horizontal world of daily life toward an elevated, sacred space. Height, after all, has long been associated with proximity to the divine. In this view, Monte Tchogha represents a local expression of a nearly universal human impulse, to build upward, to mark a place where earth and sky feel closer. Yet the structure's precision complicates purely symbolic explanations. The ramp is straight, carefully angled, and aligned with the platform's center. The platform's geometry is controlled, its edges intentional. This was not a casual accumulation of stone. It required planning, labor organization, and a clear mental image of the final form, skills not always associated with Neolithic island communities. Why invest so much effort into a structure with no obvious practical function? Some researchers point to astronomy. Though definitive alignments remain debated, the possibility that Monte Tchogha was oriented toward celestial events, such as solstices or seasonal cycles, continues to draw interest. In societies deeply tied to agricultural rhythms, the sky was a calendar, a guide, and a source of meaning. A raised platform could have served as a fixed point from which to observe changes in light and shadow, marking time through architecture. Others consider the broader context of Sardinia itself. As an island, it sat along maritime routes that connected distant shores. Even without large-scale migration, ideas can travel, carried by traders, sailors, or stories exchanged at harbors. Could the stepped form of Monte Tchogha reflect a shared architectural language, adapted locally rather than imported directly? More speculative perspectives tread carefully around these questions. Some suggest that Monte Tchogha represents evidence of a forgotten network of early cultures, connected not by empires but by ritual knowledge and symbolic forms. In this framework, similarities between distant structures are not coincidences, but echoes of shared concepts: elevation, procession, and sacred geometry. Skeptics urge restraint. Human beings, they note, often arrive at similar solutions independently. A stepped platform is a stable way to gain height. A ramp is a practical alternative to stairs when transporting objects or guiding animals. Meaning does not always require mystery. And yet, mystery persists. Monte Tchogha was eventually abandoned. Later cultures occupied the surrounding land, but the monument itself fell silent. By the Bronze Age, its original purpose may already have been forgotten. Soil accumulated, stones shifted, memory faded. When modern excavations began in the 20th century, the structure emerged not as a clear statement, but as a question carved in stone. Standing before it today, the scale feels both intimate and immense, not towering like later pyramids, yet heavy with intention. It asks us to reconsider the capabilities of early societies, not as simple precursors to civilization, but as cultures capable of abstract thought, long-term planning, and architectural precision. Was Monte Tchogha a local shrine, rooted firmly in Sardinia's own traditions? Or does it hint at wider currents of shared knowledge moving quietly across the ancient world? Did its builders see it as a bridge to the sky, to the seasons, to forces beyond naming? The stones do not answer. They endure. And in their silence, Monte Tchogha remains what it has always been. A monument not to certainty, but to intention, inviting us to look closer and to wonder how much of the ancient world still waits just beyond our understanding. From the quiet terraces of Monte Tchogha, where stone ramps reached skyward and ceremonies may have unfolded long before the written record, our exploration now carries us far north, across vast steppes and mountain ranges, to a remote island on the edge of a high-altitude lake. Here, in the heart of the Siberian Tuva Republic, lies Por-Bazhyn, a site that, at first glance, seems to defy both geography and expectation. Por-Bazhyn rests on a flat, volcanic island within Lake Caral. Its location is striking, isolated, difficult to reach, yet commanding a view of the surrounding waters and hills. The island itself is small, roughly 200 by 200 meters, but the human imprint is unmistakable. A vast rectangular enclosure rises from the landscape, bounded by stone and clay walls, punctuated by corner towers, gateways, and internal structures. From above, the geometric precision of the layout is immediately evident. Every line is straight, every angle controlled, a clear statement of planning and intent in a place where such exactness was hard-won. Archaeologists date Por-Bazhyn to the 8th century AD, attributing its construction to the Uyghur Khaganate. Yet the site's features provoke more questions than answers. The foundation reveals a blend of techniques: stone walls, clay fills, and timber construction. Defensive considerations seem present, yet the fortifications do not match any standard pattern of contemporaneous military architecture. Was Por-Bazhyn a fortress, a palace, a ceremonial center, or something that encompassed all three? The precision of its design is striking. Straight streets divide quadrants within the walls, corners meet with near-perfect right angles, and structures inside follow a coherent internal logic. Water management systems, including channels and drainage, reveal attention to detail, ensuring stability in an environment prone to shifting soil and seasonal flooding. The builders clearly understood their terrain, but their architectural language remains enigmatic to modern eyes. Mainstream interpretations focus on Por-Bazhyn's political and military context. It may have served as a strategic garrison or administrative center, projecting Uyghur influence into a remote border region. Artifacts, ceramic fragments, tools, and remnants of structures suggest temporary occupation, perhaps for ceremonial gatherings, seasonal use, or short-term defense. The precision and scale of the project, however, suggest more than mere practicality. It was a statement. Whoever built Por-Bazhyn intended to leave a lasting imprint. Yet even within these grounded interpretations, anomalies persist. Certain walls appear to have been constructed with symbolic orientation in mind, possibly aligned with cardinal directions. Internal features hint at ritualized spaces rather than purely functional buildings. Some scholars suggest that astronomical observations may have influenced the layout, with terraces and walls positioned to mark solstices or seasonal cycles. Others point to the unusual speed and scale of construction in such a remote environment, which would have required significant labor coordination and logistical planning, remarkable feats for the 8th century. More speculative perspectives add further layers of intrigue. Some researchers propose that Por-Bazhyn may have been an experimental center, blending military, ceremonial, and cosmological functions in a single site. Others wonder if the precision of its geometry reflects a lost understanding of construction techniques, inherited knowledge that allowed societies to manipulate space with a skill that seems advanced even today. Could Por-Bazhyn represent a convergence of human ambition, spiritual purpose, and technical mastery, a deliberate act of monumental intent in a landscape that offers few natural advantages? Skeptics caution against reading too much into geometry or isolation. Linear layouts can be explained by practicality, and isolated locations are common for ceremonial or defensive structures. Yet Por-Bazhyn defies easy classification. Unlike standard forts, it exhibits careful internal organization. Unlike ceremonial platforms, it possesses defensive features. Its duality, both practical and symbolic, remains one of its most compelling mysteries. The site was abandoned after only a few decades. Climate challenges, political shifts, or logistical difficulties may have forced its desertion. Yet the walls and terraces remained, a silent testimony to careful planning and coordinated labor. Today, erosion and vegetation partially obscure the original layout, but aerial surveys, satellite imagery, and archaeological excavation reveal the meticulous design still embedded in the earth. Por-Bazhyn challenges assumptions about human capability, reminding us that precision, planning, and intent are not exclusive to large empires or densely populated regions. Even in a remote lake on a high-altitude plateau, humans engineered spaces with vision, order, and symbolic weight. And though the details of daily life, ceremony, or purpose may remain obscured, the imprint of deliberate human action endures. Was Por-Bazhyn primarily a fortress, a palace, or a ceremonial hub, or did it serve a purpose we cannot yet define? Did its builders encode astronomical, spiritual, or societal meaning into the stone and timber? And what drove the construction of such a precise structure in such an isolated and challenging environment, only for it to be abandoned decades later? The answers remain elusive. What persists is the resonance of intent, the unmistakable human desire to shape the world with precision, to leave a mark that survives centuries of isolation and decay. Por-Bazhyn endures, not as a site fully understood, but as a silent question in stone, waiting patiently for those who follow to uncover what might still lie hidden beneath its measured walls. From the remote reaches of Siberia, where Por-Bazhyn rose like a measured declaration of human intent on a volcanic lake, our journey of discovery arcs now across oceans and continents, descending into the highlands of northern Peru. Here, along the winding courses of the Sechin and Kasma rivers, lies a site that challenges conventional timelines and raises questions about the origins of monumental construction in the Americas. Sechin Bajo emerges subtly from the arid coastal plain, its stone foundations partially buried beneath layers of silt and desert sands. To the untrained eye, the site may appear as a series of low mounds scattered across the landscape. But detailed excavation reveals carefully planned structures, platforms, walls, and terraces aligned with intention, built of massive stone blocks and clay, forming complex compounds that suggest communal or ceremonial functions. The scale is impressive, yet the subtlety is striking. The architecture is deliberate, precise, and, in many ways, unexpected for its time. Archaeologists date the earliest phases of Sechin Bajo to as early as 3,500 BC, making it one of the oldest monumental sites in the Americas. This predates the rise of the Inca by millennia, and even challenges assumptions about the capabilities of early Andean societies. The structures themselves are not monumental in the sense of pyramids or megalithic walls elsewhere in the world, but their design reflects a sophisticated understanding of geometry, spatial organization, and long-term planning. Platforms are carefully leveled, walls meet at deliberate angles, and compounds are arranged with a rhythm suggesting social or ritual significance. Mainstream interpretations emphasize Sechin Bajo as a ceremonial center, potentially linked to agriculture, social hierarchy, and emerging forms of community organization. Artifacts recovered from the site, ceramic fragments, stone tools, and evidence of feasting, indicate repeated gatherings and specialized activities. The complex may have served as a focal point for surrounding settlements, drawing people together for ritual, trade, or administration. Yet the question of scale remains. How did these early societies manage the labor, logistics, and architectural precision necessary to build on such a level? Some features deepen the mystery. Certain walls display cut and fitted stones, suggesting techniques that required advanced knowledge of alignment and stability. Terraces and foundations show evidence of careful leveling, even in areas where the ground is uneven. The precision is not only practical, it conveys intentionality. Every line, every corner, seems to communicate thought beyond simple construction. Were these structures designed to impress, to embody ritual meaning, or to encode knowledge we are only beginning to glimpse? More speculative theories have emerged alongside the mainstream narrative. A few researchers have noted the potential astronomical orientation of certain platforms, aligned with solstices or seasonal stars. If intentional, these alignments would reflect an understanding of celestial cycles, integrated seamlessly into the built environment. Others suggest that the site's early date may indicate a previously underappreciated capacity for complex organization and urban-like planning in preceramic Andean societies. Could Sechin Bajo represent the beginnings of monumental architecture in the Americas? A precursor to later stone complexes, long before the rise of fully stratified states? The question of abandonment also intrigues scholars. Some evidence suggests that the site was used over many centuries, with successive layers of construction and rebuilding. Yet eventually, the monumental compounds were left to the elements, covered by sand and silt. Did social or environmental pressures drive this desertion? Or was it a deliberate cultural decision, part of a ritual cycle of renewal and closure? The answers remain elusive, obscured by time, climate, and shifting sands. Sechin Bajo's location adds to its enigma. Situated in an arid zone prone to flooding from nearby rivers, the builders contended with challenging conditions, shifting soil, limited water management, and seasonal changes. Yet they chose this place intentionally, shaping the landscape to suit their designs, elevating platforms, and channeling flows of water. The site suggests a deep knowledge of the environment, combined with the ability to manipulate it precisely, a combination of practical engineering and cultural expression. What fascinates most is the subtle dialogue between permanence and impermanence. Stone and clay endure, yet time has softened their edges. Layers of sand cover what was once open terraces. The precise layouts, while partially hidden, still speak of intention, vision, and skill. They hint at a society capable of foresight, coordination, and monumental thinking, yet one whose full story remains just out of reach. Was Sechin Bajo a ceremonial center for an early Andean civilization, a hub of ritual and social organization? Or did it serve a more complex function, integrating astronomy, agriculture, and symbolic order in ways we cannot fully reconstruct? How did people, millennia ago, achieve such precision without the tools or methods we consider necessary today? And what secrets lie buried beneath the mounds, waiting for patient hands and careful analysis to uncover them. As we observe the low mounds and partially exposed terraces, a quiet realization emerges. Sechin Bajo, like the other sites we have explored, from Gunung Padang to Por-Bazhyn, reveals not only what humans built, but how ingenuity, planning, and intention have always left traces that endure far beyond a lifetime. And yet, the ultimate purpose of these traces remains a question, quietly urging us to look closer, to wonder, and to imagine what knowledge, beliefs, or aspirations they once embodied. From the monumental terraces and carefully planned compounds of Sechin Bajo, where stone and clay speak quietly of early Andean ingenuity, our journey moves slightly southward, following the ancient rhythms of the Peruvian coast. Here lies Caral, a city older than most civilizations we commonly study, a place where human ingenuity first shaped urban space with astonishing foresight. Yet within Caral's expanse, a particularly mysterious feature draws our attention: the sunken amphitheaters. At first glance, these depressions appear simple, low, circular, stepped enclosures set into the ground. But closer inspection reveals a deliberate design. Concentric terraces descend gracefully into the center, creating a natural stage framed by perfectly proportioned platforms. The amphitheaters are subtle, almost hidden, blending seamlessly into the broader cityscape, yet their geometry is precise, intentional, and profoundly intriguing. They evoke a sense of focus, as if the builders intended to direct attention, sound, and movement in ways that are still difficult to fully grasp. Caral itself flourished between roughly 3000 and 1800 BC, considered the oldest known urban center in the Americas. Sprawling across the Supe Valley, the city includes pyramids, residential compounds, plazas, and ceremonial spaces. The sunken amphitheaters, however, stand apart. Unlike the pyramids, they are not towering monuments. Unlike the large plazas, they are intimate, sunken into the earth in a way that suggests controlled engagement with both participants and spectators. The purpose of these structures is still debated, but their design reflects a sophisticated understanding of social, acoustic, and spatial dynamics. Mainstream interpretations suggest these amphitheaters were ceremonial or ritual spaces, perhaps used for gatherings, performance, or instruction. The stepped terraces could have allowed audiences to witness events, while the sunken floor concentrated attention and sound, enhancing communication without the need for elevated platforms. Some scholars also point to the amphitheater's alignment within Caral's broader urban plan, hinting that they may have been integrated into religious, astronomical, or civic practices. The design, while modest compared to the grand pyramids nearby, displays a subtle mastery of form and function that challenges assumptions about early urban architecture. Yet, mysteries abound. Why build sunken spaces rather than elevated platforms? Why invest time and labor into structures that, at first glance, appear to be invisible or secondary compared to the monumental pyramids? Some researchers suggest that depression into the earth itself held symbolic significance, perhaps representing a descent into the sacred, a connection to ancestors, or a controlled environment for ritualized sound and movement. Could the amphitheaters have been designed to enhance voice projection, amplify ceremonial chants, or create acoustic effects that still resonate today? More speculative interpretations expand the intrigue further. A few studies propose that the amphitheaters may have been used for astronomical observation, tracking sun and moon cycles within a controlled environment. Others suggest they may have served as centers of social coordination, spaces where knowledge, law, or communal decisions were enacted and witnessed. The very act of carving terraces into the earth implies a long-term vision. These structures were not temporary. They were deliberate, enduring, and integrated into the broader rhythm of Caral itself. The scale and precision of the amphitheaters also challenge assumptions about labor organization and technical skill. Caral lacked the wheel, iron tools, or writing systems as we understand them. Yet the terraces are even, carefully leveled, and consistently proportioned, indicating a deep understanding of geometry, construction, and human interaction. How was such precision achieved in an era often considered technologically primitive? How did the builders ensure that multiple amphitheaters, pyramids, and plazas formed a coherent urban plan across the valley? The question of purpose lingers. Were these spaces solely ceremonial, designed for ritual performance? Were they civic, intended to host gatherings, debates, or instruction? Or did they serve a function lost to time, a symbolic encoding of knowledge, rhythm, or cosmology? The amphitheaters remain modest in scale, yet their design communicates a profound sense of intentionality. Every step, every curve, a deliberate choice in the orchestration of space and social life. Caral's sunken amphitheaters also highlight an enduring theme of human ingenuity, the ability to manipulate space subtly rather than overtly to create impact. Unlike grand pyramids, these depressions do not dominate the landscape. They draw one inward. They demand attention, focus, and participation. In this way, they embody a principle repeated across many ancient sites. Precision need not be monumental to be profound. It is evident in design, function, and effect. As the desert wind sweeps across the Soup Valley, dust drifting over stone terraces, one cannot help but wonder what these amphitheaters witnessed thousands of years ago. Who gathered here, and for what purpose? What rituals, decisions, or performances unfolded within these concentric circles of stone? And what knowledge, now lost, guided their construction with such deliberate care? Caral's sunken amphitheaters remain enigmatic, understated, yet compelling, a testament to the deliberate precision of early urban planners. They remind us that the story of human ingenuity is not only told through monumental pyramids or massive walls, but also through subtle mastery of space, sound, and social organization. And as we trace the steps carved into these ancient terraces, we are left with a quiet, persistent question. How much more remains hidden beneath the stones, awaiting discovery, and what can these sunken stages teach us about the minds of those who first built civilization in the Americas? From the quiet terraces of Caral, where sunken amphitheaters reveal subtle mastery of space, sound, and social organization, our exploration moves northeast across deserts and mountains to the upper reaches of the Tigris River in modern-day Turkey. Here lies Arslantepe, an ancient mound whose layered palaces and fortifications whisper of a civilization mastering architecture, administration, and ceremonial expression long before written records fully took hold. Rising from the plain, Arslantepe appears modest, a natural mound, eroded and weathered by millennia of wind and rain. Yet every layer, every stone, tells a story of human ingenuity. Excavations reveal a complex of structures built with striking precision. Thick defensive walls, expansive courtyards, and multi-roomed palaces, all carefully aligned. Massive timber beams supported roofs above stone foundations, while mud brick walls created intricate internal spaces, forming both functional and ceremonial areas. The palace complex dominates the mound, yet the sophistication is in the details. Carefully laid thresholds, organized storage rooms, and ritual spaces whose function is suggested but never fully understood. Arslantepe's earliest occupation dates back as far as 6000 BC, with the palace complex emerging around 3000 BC. Over centuries, successive layers were added, each rebuilding or expanding upon the previous. Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of fortifications, ceremonial platforms, and workshops, suggesting that the site served multiple purposes: political, religious, and administrative. Pottery, figurines, and carved stones indicate a rich symbolic life, while traces of metalworking reveal early technological experimentation. Mainstream interpretations describe Arslantepe as a proto-urban center, where early elites centralized authority, controlled labor, and coordinated large-scale construction. The defensive walls and gates suggest concern with security, yet their scale does not fully match the monumental fortresses seen elsewhere. Instead, precision appears as a guiding principle. Alignments, angles, and structural consistency reflect careful planning rather than improvisation. The palace itself is not only a home or administrative hub, it is a statement of control over space, labor, and ritual, subtly communicated through architectural order. Yet the site's complexity raises questions. How did communities without fully developed writing or large-scale bureaucracies organize labor on such a scale? How were stone foundations, mud brick walls, and timber beams coordinated to create structures both functional and ceremonial? The precision of Arslantepe suggests knowledge of engineering, geometry, and social logistics that seems advanced for its era. Even small details, the alignment of thresholds, the spacing of rooms, the layering of walls, signal deliberate intention. Some aspects of the palace remain particularly enigmatic. Certain rooms are isolated, with no obvious function, while others contain objects arranged in patterns that hint at ritual or symbolic significance. Could these spaces have served as early temples, halls of governance, or ceremonial arenas? Evidence of early administrative tools, including seals and marked clay, points toward bureaucratic practice. Yet their integration within the palace raises further questions about the relationship between daily governance, religious ritual, and monumental architecture. More speculative interpretations suggest that Arslantepe represents a confluence of human ambition and emerging social complexity, a site where architectural precision served both practical and symbolic purposes. The layered construction hints at a long-term vision, as if the builders intended the palace not merely to function in the present, but to endure as a statement of cultural continuity. Could the palace's alignment, proportions, or spatial hierarchy reflect cosmological or ritual knowledge, encoded in stone and timber for generations to read and follow? Skeptics note that precision in construction can emerge from iterative practice and communal knowledge, rather than sophisticated design principles. Mud brick and timber allow for adaptability, and repeated rebuilding may refine alignment over time. Yet, the careful organization of space, the recurring motifs, and the structural consistency across centuries indicate more than chance or trial and error. Arslantepe embodies intent, the conscious shaping of the environment according to social, practical, and perhaps symbolic rules. The site also reflects an early mastery of defense and control. Thick walls, strategically placed towers, and restricted access points suggest awareness of potential threats. Yet, Arslantepe's fortifications are integrated into a broader ceremonial and administrative plan, rather than dominating it. Here, precision and purpose coexist, blending security, ritual, and daily life into a cohesive design that mirrors broader human aspirations toward order and permanence. Ultimately, Arslantepe invites reflection on the capabilities of early societies. Its palace complex, layered and deliberate, reveals a world in which humans coordinated labor, mastered construction, and embedded meaning in architecture long before urbanization became widespread. Every wall, terrace, and room speaks of intention, of foresight, and of an understanding of space that transcends mere survival. Was Arslantepe primarily a seat of political authority, a ceremonial center, or both simultaneously? Did its architects encode religious, social, or astronomical knowledge within its foundations? And how did the communities that built it transmit technical expertise, architectural precision, and social organization across generations without the tools we often associate with such achievements? The answers remain uncertain. Yet, as we trace the layered terraces, step across the stone thresholds, and imagine the activity within those walls, one truth emerges clearly. Arslantepe is a testament to deliberate human ingenuity, a place where precision, planning, and vision endured, leaving behind a silent record that continues to challenge and inspire. Its mysteries persist, quietly waiting for those willing to look closely, think deeply, and wonder at what humans achieved long before history itself was written. From the layered palaces and complex administrative structures of Arslantepe, where early societies orchestrated labor, ritual, and precision in stone and timber, our journey now shifts westward across the Americas, returning to the Andean coastline. Here, nestled in the arid plains near modern-day Huaral in Peru, lies Bandurria, a site that challenges conventional timelines, suggesting monumental construction and urban planning in the Americas long before the civilizations that typically dominate history textbooks. Bandurria rises subtly from the surrounding desert, its terraces and platforms almost imperceptible to the casual observer. At ground level, one might see only a series of low mounds and scattered stones, yet these modest elevations conceal a remarkable design. Archaeologists, employing aerial surveys and careful excavation, have revealed sunken plazas, circular and rectangular platforms, and channels carved into stone with intent and consistency. The arrangement is methodical: spaces for gathering, pathways directing movement, and terraces that rise with calculated proportions, creating an ordered landscape that seems to anticipate urban design. Dating suggests that Bandurria flourished as early as 4000 BC, contemporaneous with or even predating other notable preceramic sites along the central Peruvian coast. This positions the settlement among the earliest known in the Americas to exhibit organized, large-scale construction, including terraces, sunken spaces, and complex drainage systems. The discovery has challenged assumptions that monumental architecture required the social complexity associated with later Andean civilizations. Bandurria demonstrates that early communities could organize labor, manipulate the environment, and achieve precision without formalized states or writing systems. Mainstream interpretations describe Bandurria as a ceremonial and residential center. Terraces likely served dual purposes, both stabilizing the soil for habitation and delineating areas of ritual significance. Circular platforms and sunken plazas may have facilitated gatherings or ceremonial acts, while channels and drainage indicate careful attention to water management, essential in a coastal desert environment prone to flooding and erosion. Together, these features suggest a society attentive not only to survival but to spatial organization, symbolism, and long-term planning. Yet Bandurria raises questions that remain unanswered. Why invest such effort in terraces, platforms, and sunken spaces at a time when agriculture was still developing and communities were relatively small? How did early planners coordinate the movement of stone, labor, and resources with such consistency across multiple structures? The precision of the alignments, the regularity of terraces, and the methodical layout hint at knowledge that transcends simple trial and error construction. More speculative interpretations emerge from these questions. Some researchers suggest that Bandurria may have served as an early ceremonial hub, perhaps aligned with celestial events, though definitive evidence remains elusive. The sunken plazas, reminiscent of those at Caral, invite comparisons. Were these depressions designed to amplify sound during gatherings, concentrate visual focus, or embody symbolic meaning? Did the planners encode cosmological knowledge or social hierarchy into the very fabric of the settlement? And if so, how was such knowledge transmitted across generations without writing or formalized instruction? The scale of Bandurria also invites consideration. While not as massive as Caral or later urban centers, its layout demonstrates a sophisticated understanding of human movement and environmental control. Platforms rise and fall in precise relation to one another. Pathways are deliberate, and the integration of terraces with natural slopes reflects careful observation and adaptation. The labor required for such construction would have been considerable, suggesting social cohesion and coordination on a level often unappreciated in preceramic contexts. Skeptics caution that some perceived precision may be overinterpreted. Natural terrain can guide the placement of terraces and platforms, and the accumulation of sand and sediment may exaggerate apparent regularity. Yet repeated observations, combined with excavated evidence of stone and clay placement, suggest intentionality. The builders of Bandurria left more than scattered stones. They left patterns, organized spaces, and a silent message of skill, foresight, and purpose. The question of abandonment adds another layer of mystery. Evidence indicates that some terraces and platforms were deliberately modified or left incomplete, while others were maintained over centuries. Was this a result of changing environmental conditions, shifting social structures, or ritual practice? And what does the deliberate design of these spaces tell us about the cognitive and cultural sophistication of their creators? Bandurria, like other early Andean sites, exemplifies a recurring theme in our exploration. Precision, planning, and architectural intention often appear in unexpected places, long before history recorded the rise of complex states. The settlement demonstrates that humans, even in preceramic periods, could conceptualize large-scale spaces, coordinate labor effectively, and build with both function and symbolism in mind. As the desert wind sweeps across the terraces and sunken plazas, one is struck by the quiet intelligence embedded in stone and soil. Who gathered here, and for what purpose? How did early planners envision, communicate, and execute such a coherent design? And how many details, hidden beneath layers of sediment and time, remain undiscovered, waiting to reveal the full scope of human ingenuity? Bandurria endures as a testament to deliberate construction and thoughtful planning. Its terraces, platforms, and sunken spaces invite us to consider the capacity of early societies to shape their environment with precision, purpose, and vision. And as we trace the contours of its ancient design, the site poses a persistent question. What knowledge, what intent, and what stories lie hidden beneath the desert sands, waiting for the patient observer to uncover them? From the arid plains and precise terraces of Bandurria, where early humans organized space and labor with remarkable foresight, our journey now carries us across the Mediterranean to the small, limestone-rich island of Gozo, part of Malta's archipelago. Here lies the Tal-Qadi Stone, a singular megalith whose silent presence invites both awe and deep curiosity. Unlike sprawling settlements or monumental pyramids, this object is subtle, almost understated, yet it radiates an air of intention and precision that demands careful attention. The Tal-Qadi Stone rests in situ on a gentle rise, its flat surface and smooth contours catching the Mediterranean sun. At first glance, it could be mistaken for a natural slab, part of the limestone bedrock that dominates the landscape. But closer inspection reveals its deliberate shaping. Edges carved with care, surfaces smoothed and oriented, and incised grooves whose purpose is still debated. It is small compared to Malta's massive temples, yet its precision is astonishing. The stone appears to have been carefully placed, aligned, and possibly used for observation, calculation, or ritual. Archaeologists associate Tal-Qadi with Malta's temple-building culture, dating roughly between 3,600 and 2,500 BC, during a period when the islands were home to some of the earliest monumental architecture in the world. This was a society capable of quarrying, transporting, and shaping massive blocks of limestone, constructing multi-tiered temples with corbelled ceilings, intricate altars, and ceremonial passages. Within this broader context, the Tal-Qadi Stone stands out, not for size, but for its subtlety, geometry, and possible function. Mainstream interpretations suggest that the stone may have served as a ritual or ceremonial instrument. Some propose it was part of an altar system, aligned with temple axes or nearby structures, perhaps used in conjunction with offerings or communal observances. Its placement and orientation could have amplified symbolic meaning, connecting the builders to natural cycles, the rising and setting sun, or other celestial markers. Excavations nearby reveal remnants of habitation and temple activity, indicating that the stone was integrated into a landscape carefully designed for both ritual and daily life. Yet much about Tal-Qadi defies straightforward explanation. Its small size and careful shaping suggest it was not intended for monumental display. The incised lines and grooves hint at knowledge of measurement, orientation, or symbolism that remains elusive. Were these marks functional, recording time, astronomical cycles, or measurements of distance and proportion, or were they symbolic, encoding cultural meaning beyond the practical? The precision of the stone challenges assumptions about the limits of Neolithic technology and understanding. Speculative theories have long circulated among researchers, intrigued by Malta's temple culture. Some suggest the stone may have been used as a solar or lunar observatory, its grooves marking seasonal transitions, solstices or equinoxes. Others propose it was a focal point for ritualized games, offerings, or communal rites, where alignment and orientation guided participants' movement and attention. In each interpretation, the common thread is precision. The builders understood that even a small object, carefully shaped and placed, could interact meaningfully with space, light, and human perception. The Tal-Qadi stone also raises broader questions about knowledge transmission. How did prehistoric Maltese societies acquire and apply such precise understanding of geometry, orientation, and construction? The island's temples demonstrate mastery of corbelling, structural alignment, and acoustics. Tal-Qadi, though smaller, reflects a similar attention to detail. Was this precision learned through careful observation and apprenticeship, passed down through generations? Or does it hint at knowledge embedded in cultural memory, now only partially understood? Skeptics caution against overinterpreting small stones. Natural processes, erosion, or chance alignments can create apparent patterns. Yet Tal-Qadi's deliberate placement, carved edges, and incisions suggest intentionality beyond coincidence. The stone is not merely a product of the landscape, it is a creation of human hands, shaped for a purpose that resonates across millennia. Its modest scale enhances rather than diminishes the mystery, inviting consideration of the subtle ways early humans expressed knowledge, power, and ritual intent. And the surrounding landscape adds another layer to the enigma. From the Tal-Qadi site, distant temple complexes, rocky outcrops, and the Mediterranean horizon are all visible, suggesting that placement may have been as much about context as the object itself. In this way, Tal-Qadi functions as a node in a broader network of spatial relationships, an artifact whose meaning emerges not in isolation, but through its integration with terrain, light, and human activity. Ultimately, the Tal-Qadi stone endures as a reminder that precision need not be monumental to be profound. Its smooth surfaces, carved lines, and deliberate placement testify to a society that understood measurement, alignment, and symbolic space, even at a scale that might seem insignificant compared to the temples of Malta. It challenges us to reconsider assumptions about prehistoric capability. That insight, planning, and accuracy could manifest in both vast complexes and small, enigmatic objects alike. Was the Tal-Qadi stone a measuring instrument, a ritual focal point, or a symbolic object whose meaning is now lost? Did it encode astronomical, cultural, or mathematical knowledge? And how many other small, deliberate objects from prehistory remain undiscovered, quietly testifying to human ingenuity? As we stand beside its weathered surface, imagining the hands that shaped it, the light that fell across it, and the rituals that may have centered on it, one question lingers. What secrets does Tal-Qadi still hold? And how much more of humanity's early mastery of precision, purpose, and design remains hidden, waiting to be revealed? From the carefully shaped Tal-Qadi Stone of Malta, where subtle precision hints at lost knowledge and ritual practice, our exploration arcs back across the Mediterranean to the rugged island of Sardinia. Here, scattered across the limestone hills and fertile valleys, lie the Sardinian sacred wells, stone constructions whose enduring form and meticulous design reveal a civilization deeply attuned to both environment and belief. Unlike monumental temples or palaces, these wells are intimate yet precise, blending utility, ritual, and geometric mastery in ways that continue to challenge modern understanding. Sardinian sacred wells rise from the earth as cylindrical or square shafts, lined with carefully cut blocks of local stone. Each well penetrates the ground with remarkable precision, sometimes descending over 10 meters into the limestone, forming a vertical tunnel encircled by perfectly fitted masonry. At the base, a small chamber often collects water, while steps or terraces facilitate access. The surfaces are smoothed, the stones aligned with care, and in many cases, the wells are oriented toward cardinal points or solar events, suggesting a deliberate integration of architecture, environment, and celestial observation. These wells, constructed during the Bronze Age, roughly between 1500 and 1200 BC, reflect the ingenuity of the Nuragic civilization, whose more famous nuraghi dominate the Sardinian landscape. Yet the sacred wells are unique in their purpose and precision. Unlike defensive towers or large communal structures, the wells were not primarily designed to house or protect. They were constructed to access and venerate water, a resource both practical and sacred in a Mediterranean climate prone to seasonal drought. The combination of functional engineering and ritual significance makes each well a remarkable achievement in precision and design. Archaeological studies suggest that the wells served multiple roles. Water may have been collected for daily use, but the precision of the stonework, the alignment of entrances, and the ceremonial nature of surrounding spaces imply a spiritual dimension. Excavations near sites such as Santa Cristina and Fontana Coberta have revealed altars, offerings, and traces of ritual activity, suggesting that these wells were sacred spaces where communities gathered, observed the heavens, and conducted ceremonies tied to fertility, rain, or celestial cycles. Yet the meticulous construction raises questions that linger. How did Bronze Age builders achieve such uniformity in stone cutting and alignment, especially given the limitations of contemporary tools? Many wells feature stones cut to fit perfectly without mortar, forming a circular or square shaft that has endured millennia. How were these vertical tunnels so precisely carved and stabilized, particularly when descending into limestone or softer rock prone to collapse? The precision suggests both careful planning and deep practical knowledge, yet the methods remain partly speculative. Some researchers propose that the orientation of these wells was not arbitrary. Certain wells align with the rising sun at solstices or with the cardinal points, hinting at astronomical observation integrated with sacred practice. Could the Nuragic people have used these vertical shafts as instruments to track seasonal changes, guide agricultural cycles, or connect human activity with celestial rhythms? Others suggest that the steps, terraces, and chamber dimensions were designed with acoustic or ritual purposes in mind, amplifying sound or movement during ceremonies. Speculative theories extend the mystery further. Some observers argue that the architectural precision of the wells may reflect a knowledge of geometry or proportionality that predates written records. If so, these structures could represent a form of early science encoded in stone, where observation, measurement, and ritual intersected seamlessly. Could the sacred wells be part of a broader network of sites transmitting knowledge of astronomy, water management, or cosmology across Sardinia? Skeptics caution that some alignments may be coincidental and that practical considerations, such as following the natural water table or stabilizing soft rock, dictated construction choices. Yet, even accounting for practicality, the uniformity, consistency, and geometric care of these wells remain remarkable. They endure not simply as functional features, but as monuments to intention, skill, and a worldview that fused the sacred with the pragmatic. The social context also invites reflection. Constructing a vertical well of this precision required coordinated labor, technical understanding, and communal investment. Who directed this work, and how was expertise transmitted? Were sacred wells central to communal identity, or reserved for elite ritual practice? How did these communities balance the need for water with the spiritual significance assigned to its collection and use? These questions remain open, underscoring the depth of sophistication embedded in seemingly modest structures. Walking among the wells today, the landscape is quiet, the stones weathered but enduring. Each shaft draws the eye downward, inviting contemplation of the unseen water below and the generations of people who carefully carved, aligned, and revered these spaces. The geometric clarity and enduring stability of these wells speak to a society capable of combining practical engineering with spiritual symbolism, a society that understood the language of stone, water, and celestial movement. Were the Sardinian sacred wells primarily functional, ritual, or a deliberate synthesis of both? Did their precision encode knowledge of astronomy, geometry, or cosmology lost to time? And how much more might remain undiscovered, hidden beneath the limestone, or awaiting recognition by careful observation? These questions linger in the shadows of the wells, echoing through centuries. The Nuragic people shaped the earth with foresight, carving stone with purpose, aligning chambers with the sun, and creating spaces where humans and nature intersected in measured harmony. And as we trace the smooth stones and step into these vertical chambers, one truth becomes clear. The sacred wells endure not only as feats of engineering, but as monuments to precision, intentionality, and the enduring human desire to connect the practical with the sacred. They remain, quietly, a mystery waiting to be fully understood. The camera drifts slowly eastward, away from the stone monuments we have just left behind, and into the wide, sunburned plains of southwestern Iran. The light changes here. It grows harsher, more vertical, as if the land itself is holding its breath. In the distance, rising unexpectedly from the flat horizon, a massive stepped form begins to take shape. Angular, deliberate, and unmistakably artificial. This is Tchogha Zanbil, one of the most enigmatic sacred complexes of the ancient world. At first glance, it feels out of place. There are no mountains to anchor it, no bustling modern city surrounding it. Instead, the structure stands in isolation, a colossal ziggurat built of millions of mud bricks, some still bearing inscriptions pressed into their surfaces more than 3,000 years ago. Wind moves across the plain, carrying dust through broken walls and abandoned courtyards. The silence is profound. And yet, this place was never meant to be silent. Tchogha Zanbil was constructed around 1250 BC, during the height of the Elamite civilization, under the rule of King Untash Napirisha. Unlike many ancient monuments that grew organically over centuries, this site appears to have been conceived almost fully formed, a planned sacred city built from the ground up with a singular purpose. At its heart stood the ziggurat, once soaring over 50 meters high, layered in precise, receding terraces that drew the eye. and perhaps the spirit, upward toward the sky. Mainstream archaeology tells us that this was a religious center, dedicated primarily to the god Inshushinak, a protector deity of the Elamite capital Susa. The structure follows the familiar Mesopotamian tradition of ziggurat building, a symbolic mountain bridging the earthly realm and the divine. And yet, the more closely scholars study Tchogha Zanbil, the more it resists simple categorization. Unlike other ziggurats, this one was not built atop earlier foundations. It was raised directly from the plain, its geometry imposed upon the landscape with remarkable confidence. The alignment of its walls is precise. Its corners orient cleanly toward the cardinal directions. Surrounding it are 3 concentric walls, enclosing temples, courtyards, water systems, and ritual spaces, each layer carefully positioned, each distance seemingly measured rather than improvised. How did builders of the 13th century BC achieve such consistency over a structure of this scale? Excavations have revealed an advanced hydraulic system, channeling water from the nearby Karke River through kilometers of conduits, settling basins and reservoirs. The system filtered sediment before the water reached the inner sanctum, an extraordinary level of engineering foresight for its time. This was not merely symbolic architecture. It was functional, durable, and designed with long-term use in mind. Some researchers suggest that Tchogha Zanbil represents a transitional moment in ancient construction, a point where religious symbolism, urban planning, and applied engineering converged. But others see something more puzzling. Many of the bricks used in the ziggurat are stamped with nearly identical inscriptions, naming the king and invoking divine protection. The uniformity is striking. Producing this volume of standardized materials would have required centralized organization, strict quality control, and a workforce trained to follow exact specifications. This raises a quiet but persistent question. Was Elamite society more technologically and administratively advanced than we typically assume? As the camera moves closer, details emerge. Stairways that do not lead directly to the summit but instead force a winding ascent. Platforms whose purpose is still debated. Temples dedicated to multiple deities, carefully spaced around the central tower. This was not a place designed for casual access. Movement here was controlled, choreographed, perhaps ritualized. And then there is the matter of abandonment. For reasons still unclear, Tchogha Zanbil was never completed. Some sections show signs of hurried construction. Others appear untouched, as if work stopped abruptly. Historical records suggest that military conflict, possibly an Assyrian campaign, disrupted Elamite power in the region. But no definitive evidence confirms a dramatic destruction event at the site itself. So why build a sacred city of such ambition only to leave it unfinished? One theory holds that the site's religious function changed, or that political priorities shifted back to older urban centers. Another suggests environmental factors, changes in water availability, soil stability, or climate conditions that made continued occupation impractical. Yet none of these explanations fully account for the scale of the initial investment or the precision with which the site was laid out. This gap between intention and outcome is where more speculative ideas begin to surface. Some alternative researchers point to the ziggurat's geometry, noting proportional relationships that appear consistent across multiple ancient sites in Mesopotamia. They ask whether these builders were working from a shared system of measurement, or even a lost body of architectural knowledge passed down through generations. Others draw attention to the site's isolation, proposing that its location may have been chosen for reasons beyond visibility or defense, perhaps astronomical observation or alignment with celestial cycles now forgotten. The ziggurat's orientation, while broadly cardinal, is not perfectly so. Small deviations exist, subtle enough to escape casual notice, yet consistent enough to invite interpretation. Were these errors? Or were they intentional adjustments, tied to star positions, solstices, or ritual calendars? Mainstream scholarship remains cautious, and rightly so. There is no definitive evidence that Tchogha Zanbil functioned as an observatory or encoded advanced astronomical data. Still, the questions persist, partly because the structure itself invites them. It feels deliberate in ways that go beyond mere monumentality. Even the name Tchogha Zanbil, meaning basket mound in the local language, hints at a layered complexity, something built up, woven together, enclosing more than it reveals. As centuries passed, the ziggurat weathered earthquakes, erosion, and human neglect. Mud brick returned slowly to dust. The upper tiers collapsed inward. And yet, the core endured. When modern archaeologists rediscovered the site in the 20th century, they were struck not only by its size, but by its integrity. Unlike many ancient ruins reduced to foundations, Tchogha Zanbil still stood tall enough to dominate the horizon. It had waited. Standing here today, one cannot help but feel that this was a place designed to be experienced over time, to impress, to intimidate, to elevate. Whether through ritual procession, controlled access, or sheer scale, the architecture shaped perception. It guided movement, framed sightlines, and reinforced hierarchy. Was this simply an expression of religious devotion? Or was it also a demonstration of power, an announcement in brick and geometry that the Elamites had mastered both earth and organization? And if so, what knowledge did they possess that has since faded from our historical memory? We know their gods by name, their kings by inscription. We can translate their bricks, map their walls, trace their water channels. Yet the deeper logic of the site, the full intention behind its design, remains elusive. Something about Tchogha Zanbil resists closure. It offers facts, but withholds meaning. As the sun lowers and shadows stretch across the terraces, the ziggurat seems to change character. Its sharp angles soften. Its mass becomes less architectural, more geological, as if it has always been here, an artificial mountain slowly reabsorbed by the land. Perhaps that is the final mystery. Not how it was built, but why it still speaks to us. Was Tchogha Zanbil merely a temple that time interrupted? Or was it part of a broader vision, one we no longer have the context to fully understand? And if entire systems of knowledge can vanish once before, what else might be missing from the story of our past, still buried beneath the dust, waiting for the right moment to be seen again? From the shadowed corridors of earlier monuments, where stone seemed to obey rules we barely understand, the journey now drifts northward, away from enclosed chambers and towering blocks, into an open landscape shaped as much by time as by human intention. The transition is subtle. The mystery does not end. It simply changes form. Here, the questions are not locked inside walls, but spread across an entire valley. High in the Italian Alps, where the mountains fold inward like slow-moving waves of stone, lies Val Camonica. At first glance, it appears timeless and quiet. A long glacial valley carved by ice and rivers, its slopes dense with forests, its floor traced by water that has followed the same path for tens of thousands of years. But beneath this calm surface is one of the most extensive and enigmatic prehistoric landscapes ever discovered in Europe. Scattered across the valley are vast rock platforms, smooth, sloping expanses of stone exposed by erosion and retreating glaciers. These are not isolated boulders or random outcrops. They are deliberate surfaces, many of them carefully prepared, polished by ancient hands, and covered with engravings so numerous that even today, researchers struggle to count them all. Estimates suggest more than 300,000 individual carvings, created over a span of nearly 8,000 years. Standing before one of these platforms, the sensation is unsettling. The rock feels less like ground and more like a page written and rewritten by generations who never imagined their messages would survive into a distant future. Figures overlap, symbols repeat. Some designs are clear: animals with elongated bodies, hunters with raised weapons, human figures locked in ritualized poses. Others resist easy interpretation: grids, spirals, ladders, geometric shapes whose meanings have long since slipped beyond certainty. The earliest carvings in Val Camonica date back to around 6000 BC, when the valley's first Neolithic communities began marking the stone. These early images are sparse, almost tentative, as if testing whether the rock itself would remember. Over time, especially during the Copper Age and Bronze Age, roughly between 3000 and 1200 BC, the platforms became increasingly dense with imagery. Entire slopes were transformed into symbolic landscapes, each engraving adding to an ever-growing visual archive. Mainstream archaeology offers grounded explanations. The carvings, scholars suggest, reflect daily life, belief systems, and social structures. Scenes of plowing and hunting indicate agricultural cycles. Weapons and dueling figures may represent warrior status or rites of passage. Solar symbols and repeated patterns could mark seasonal events, solstices, planting times, or communal gatherings tied to the rhythms of nature. Yet the platforms themselves complicate this picture. Many are positioned at specific angles, facing particular directions, often overlooking wide sections of the valley. Some receive sunlight at precise moments of the year, while remaining in shadow at others. This has led researchers to ask whether the location of the platforms mattered as much as the images carved upon them. Were these rocks chosen simply because they were exposed and workable? Or did their placement reflect a deeper understanding of landscape, light, and visibility? In several cases, the carvings are not randomly scattered but organized into zones. Certain symbols appear repeatedly in specific areas, as if the platforms were divided into thematic sections. One surface may be dominated by weapon imagery, another by abstract symbols, another by human figures engaged in what appear to be ceremonial acts. This patterning hints at intentional design, a structured use of space rather than spontaneous decoration. As the investigation deepens, the valley begins to resemble something more complex than an art gallery. Some researchers have proposed that Val Camonica functioned as a vast open-air ritual center, a place where communities gathered over centuries to record cosmology, lineage, and myth. In this view, the rock platforms were not passive surfaces but active participants in cultural memory, anchors linking the living to ancestors and to forces believed to govern the world. Still, unanswered questions remain. Why carve images so persistently in the same locations for thousands of years? Why return again and again to the same stone, even as styles, tools, and cultures changed? And perhaps most puzzling, why leave so much unspoken? There are no written explanations, no clear narrative sequences. The carvings communicate, but in a language that seems deliberately symbolic rather than literal. This ambiguity has opened the door to more speculative interpretations. Some fringe researchers suggest that the platform served as prehistoric maps, encoded representations of the valley itself or of routes through the Alps. Certain geometric patterns have been compared to topographical layouts, river systems, or even star constellations. According to this perspective, Val Camonica was a place where knowledge, geographical, astronomical, or otherwise, was preserved in stone. Others focus on the physical act of carving. The sheer labor involved is staggering. Many engravings were pecked into hard rock using stone tools, a process requiring patience, precision, and coordination. To some, this suggests that the platforms were not casual creations, but the result of organized, possibly specialized groups. Could there have been dedicated carvers, individuals trained to inscribe symbols whose meanings were restricted to an inner circle? There are even theories that stretch further, proposing that the platforms functioned as energy sites, locations where natural forces intersected. Proponents point to the valley's geology, its magnetic anomalies, and the way certain platforms align with prominent mountain peaks. While such ideas remain outside mainstream acceptance, they persist, fueled by the undeniable sense that these rocks were chosen, not discovered by chance. What complicates all interpretations is continuity. Val Camonica does not represent a single culture or moment in time. It is a palimpsest, layers of meaning accumulating over millennia. Iron Age carvings overlay Bronze Age ones. Christian symbols later appear alongside pagan imagery, suggesting that even as belief systems shifted, the valley retained its significance. The place itself mattered more than any one message. Viewed this way, the rock platforms become less about specific answers and more about human impulse, the desire to mark existence, to leave traces, to speak across time. Yet even this explanation feels incomplete. The precision of certain engravings, the repetition of specific motifs, and the careful use of space all hint at intentions more focused than simple expression. As modern researchers scan the platforms with drones, 3D mapping tools, and digital reconstruction software, new details continue to emerge. Patterns invisible from ground level become clear from above. Relationships between distant platforms come into focus, and with each discovery, the sense grows that Val Camonica is not a collection of isolated artworks, but a single, massive system, one whose logic has yet to be fully decoded. Perhaps the most haunting aspect of the valley is its silence. Unlike monumental structures that dominate skylines, these platforms lie quietly underfoot. One can walk across them without immediately realizing what they contain. The mystery reveals itself slowly, demanding attention, patience, and humility. So the question lingers: were the people of Val Camonica simply recording their world? Or were they encoding something meant to endure beyond memory, something we are only now beginning to glimpse? And if these stone pages still hold messages we cannot read, what else might the valley be waiting to tell us as we learn piece by piece how to listen? As we move onward from the last site, where stone, time, and intention seem to converge with unsettling precision, we arrive at another place where the past feels carefully arranged rather than casually abandoned. The journey does not leap forward. It drifts. Across water, across centuries, across a quiet landscape that appears almost ordinary until you stand still long enough to notice what has been fixed within it. On the eastern edge of the island of Jersey, rising gently from a green slope that overlooks the sea, stands La Hougue Bie. At first glance, it resembles a low, grass-covered hill, shaped by wind and rain like so many others. Sheep graze nearby. The horizon is calm. Nothing announces that this mound conceals one of the most significant prehistoric structures in Europe. Yet beneath this unassuming surface lies a stone-built passage, aligned with a precision that continues to challenge our assumptions about Neolithic knowledge and intent. La Hougue Bie dates to around 4000 to 3500 BC, placing it among the earliest monumental constructions in the British Isles. Long before metal tools, long before written language, long before what we conventionally call civilization, someone planned this place. Someone measured, oriented, and built it, not quickly, not crudely, but with care that suggests foresight extending far beyond a single lifetime. The structure itself is a passage grave, a long, narrow corridor built from massive stone slabs leading inward to a chamber at the heart of the mound. The passage stretches for nearly 20 meters, low and tight, forcing anyone who enters to stoop, to move slowly, to become aware of every step. The stones are dry laid, fitted together without mortar, yet they have held their position for thousands of years. The weight above them, tons of earth and rock, has not collapsed the space. This alone raises a quiet question. How well did its builders understand balance, load, and structural stress? But it is not just the engineering that draws attention. It is the alignment. Each year, around the spring equinox, something remarkable happens. As the sun rises in the eastern sky, its light travels directly down the length of the passage, illuminating the back wall of the chamber. For a brief moment, darkness retreats, and the interior glows with a soft, deliberate brightness. This is not accidental. The alignment is too exact, the timing too precise. To achieve this, the builders would have needed sustained observation of the sun's movement across seasons, years, perhaps generations, of watching how light behaved on the horizon. They would have needed to mark positions, remember patterns, and translate those observations into stone. This suggests not only astronomical awareness, but also a shared cultural memory capable of preserving knowledge across time. Mainstream archaeology offers a grounded explanation. La Hougue Bie is understood as a ceremonial tomb, a place where the dead were laid to rest and the living engaged in rituals tied to cycles of nature. The equinox alignment, in this view, symbolized renewal, the balance between light and dark, life and death. The sun entering the chamber may have represented rebirth, or the continued presence of ancestors within the rhythm of the living world. Excavations have uncovered human remains, pottery, and tools consistent with Neolithic burial practices. There is no need, archaeologists argue, to look beyond the cultural and spiritual frameworks we already know existed at the time. Early agricultural societies were deeply attuned to seasonal change. Their survival depended on it. Aligning monuments with solar events was practical as much as symbolic. And yet, even within this explanation, unease lingers. Because the precision remains striking. Because the labor investment was immense. Because this was not an isolated effort, but part of a wider pattern. Across Europe, from Newgrange in Ireland to Maeshowe in Orkney, passage graves from roughly the same era demonstrate similar astronomical alignments. These communities were separated by distance, by terrain, by water. How did such consistent architectural ideas spread? Through migration? Through shared belief systems? Through something else entirely? Some researchers propose that these sites formed a kind of sacred landscape, a network of ritual centers connected by ideology rather than roads. Knowledge may have been transmitted orally, carried by travelers, embedded in stories and ceremonies rather than written instruction. In this sense, La Hougue Bie becomes not just a local monument, but part of a continent-scale conversation conducted in stone. Beyond academic circles, more speculative interpretations have emerged. Some suggest that the alignment reflects a level of astronomical sophistication that predates conventional timelines. How, they ask, could Neolithic builders calculate solar positions so accurately without instruments? Were there lost techniques, now invisible to us? Or knowledge systems that do not survive in material form? Others go further still, proposing that sites like La Hougue Bie served purposes beyond burial or ritual, perhaps as observatories, initiation chambers, or even symbolic gateways between worlds. These ideas remain unproven and sit outside accepted scholarship, yet they persist, partly because the monument itself resists easy categorization. It does not explain itself. It waits. Even the mound's name carries layers of ambiguity. Hougue is thought to derive from Old Norse, meaning mound or barrow, a reminder that long after its construction, new cultures encountered this place and folded it into their own understanding of the land. In the medieval period, a Christian chapel was built atop the mound, aligning a new belief system directly above the old. Stone upon stone, faith upon faith. Was this an act of reverence, of dominance, or simply continuity, each era responding to the same intuitive pull of the location? Standing inside the passage today, the air is cool and still. Sound fades. The outside world feels distant, compressed into a narrow rectangle of light at the entrance. It is easy to imagine how this space might alter perception, how ritual movement and controlled illumination could shape emotional and psychological experience. Whether or not one accepts the more speculative theories, it is difficult to deny that this was a place designed to affect those who entered it. What did the builders believe would happen when the sun reached the chamber? Was it a moment meant to be witnessed by many, or by a select few? Did it mark a calendar date, a spiritual threshold, or something we no longer have words for? After thousands of years, La Hougue Bie still performs its quiet act with unwavering consistency. The sun rises, the light enters, the stones receive it without comment. We observe, measure, interpret, but the original intent remains just beyond reach. And so the alignment endures, not as an answer, but as an invitation. If people with no written language could shape stone and sunlight so deliberately, what else might they have known? And what other patterns, still buried beneath grass and time, are waiting to be noticed, not discovered but understood? As the echoes of earlier discoveries begin to fade, the journey does not end. It slows, turns, and settles into another landscape shaped by stone, earth, and long-forgotten intention. From monumental alignments and improbable precision, we move now toward a quieter mystery. One that rises not from soaring pillars, but from layered walls and watchful hillsides. Here, in the dry southeast of the Iberian Peninsula, the land itself seems to remember. The plateau of Los Millares stretches above the Andarax River, near what is now Almeria in southern Spain. At first glance, the terrain feels austere. Sun-baked soil, sparse vegetation, rolling hills that blend into the horizon. But as the light shifts, the contours of something deliberate begin to emerge. Low stone walls trace arcs across the ground. Circular towers interrupt the slopes at measured intervals. Ditches cut into the earth with patient consistency. This is not a random scattering of ruins. It is a system, a fortified settlement built more than 5,000 years ago during the Copper Age, roughly between 3,200 and 2,300 BC. Los Millares is often described as one of the earliest and most complex fortified sites in prehistoric Europe. Its builders, whose names and language are lost to time, constructed not one wall, but multiple concentric defenses. 3 main stone walls, reinforced with bastions and towers, and supported by a series of outer forts positioned across the surrounding hills. Beyond the walls lies a vast necropolis of more than 80 collective tombs, each carefully built with stone corridors and chambers. The scale alone raises questions. This was not a small village reacting to a sudden threat. It was a planned settlement, designed with foresight, coordination, and a deep understanding of both landscape and structure. Archaeologists have long pointed to conflict as the most straightforward explanation. The Copper Age was a period of transition, new technologies, emerging social hierarchies, competition over resources. Copper metallurgy appears at Los Millares early and prominently, suggesting access to valuable materials and trade networks stretching across the Western Mediterranean. Where wealth accumulates, so too does risk. Defensive walls, watchtowers, and controlled access points could reflect a community protecting itself from rivals, raiders, or instability in a changing world. And yet, the fortifications of Los Millares are unusually elaborate for their time. The outer forts are not simply lookout points. They are substantial structures in their own right, positioned to control movement through the valley. The walls are thick, carefully constructed, and rebuilt over generations. Some entrances are angled or narrowed, forcing anyone approaching to slow, turn, and expose themselves. This level of architectural sophistication suggests more than fear. It implies strategy, long-term planning, and possibly a centralized authority capable of mobilizing large numbers of people. Who, then, was giving the orders? Within the main enclosure, evidence points to a dense population, perhaps up to 1,000 inhabitants at its peak. Houses were circular, built of stone and mud brick, clustered along narrow paths. Storage areas indicate surplus production, while workshops reveal metalworking, pottery, and tool-making. This was not a temporary refuge. It was a thriving center of life, labor, and ritual. The nearby necropolis deepens the mystery. The tombs are communal, used over long periods, with carefully arranged burials and grave goods that include ceramics, tools, and ornaments. Some individuals were buried with more elaborate items than others, hinting at social differentiation. But the emphasis remains collective rather than individual. The dead were not separated from the living by distance or neglect. They were placed within sight of the settlement, integrated into its daily horizon. Mainstream interpretations suggest that Los Millares represents an early example of proto-urban society in Europe, a place where population density, economic specialization, and social hierarchy converged. The fortifications, in this view, are a natural response to these developments. As communities grew larger and more complex, they needed protection, not only from external threats, but from internal tensions as well. Still, not all questions are so easily contained. Why invest such extraordinary effort into defenses when there is limited evidence of large-scale warfare? Weapons have been found, yes, but not in quantities that clearly point to constant conflict. There are no mass graves, no unmistakable signs of repeated violent destruction. The walls were maintained and expanded over centuries, suggesting continuity rather than crisis. Some researchers have proposed that the fortifications served symbolic or social functions beyond defense. Walls, after all, do more than keep people out. They define who belongs inside. They create boundaries, identities, and shared purpose. In this sense, Los Millares may have been as much about cohesion as protection. The act of building together, maintaining the walls, and living within their enclosure could have reinforced social order in a time of rapid change. Others look to the landscape itself. The site commands a strategic view of the Andarax Valley, a natural corridor between the coast and the interior. Control of this passage would have meant control of trade, metals, obsidian, shells, ideas. The fortifications may reflect not fear, but confidence, a declaration of presence, power, and permanence in a contested space. Beyond these interpretations lie more speculative considerations, often raised quietly, cautiously, at the edges of academic discussion. The precision of the layout, the alignment of certain structures, and the relationship between the settlement and its surrounding forts have led some to wonder whether there was a deeper logic at work, one not solely military or economic. Could the positioning of the walls and towers reflect an understanding of geometry or movement that we have yet to fully recognize? Were the outer forts part of a signaling network using fire or sound to communicate across distances? Did the builders of Los Millares inherit knowledge from earlier traditions now lost, adapting it to new materials and challenges? There is also the question of time. Los Millares was occupied for nearly a millennium, a remarkable span for any prehistoric settlement. Over that time, generations lived, died, rebuilt, and reimagined the same space. The fortifications we see today are not the product of a single moment, but of accumulated decisions layered one upon another, What began as a modest enclosure may have evolved into something far more complex, shaped by memory as much as necessity. Standing among the ruins now, it is difficult to separate intention from interpretation. The stones are silent, but they are not mute. They carry the weight of labor, hands that quarried, shaped, and stacked them without mortar, relying on balance and experience. They carry the rhythm of daily life, the tension of watchful nights, the solemnity of burial rites conducted under open skies. And they carry absence. No written records survive to explain why Los Millares was ultimately abandoned around 2300 BC. Climate change, resource depletion, social upheaval. Each has been proposed, none proven. The walls, once so carefully maintained, were left to erode. The towers fell quiet. The valley moved on. Yet even in ruin, Los Millares resists simplicity. It does not fit neatly into a single narrative of progress or collapse. It stands instead as a reminder that complexity is not a modern invention. That long before empires and alphabets, human societies were already grappling with questions of security, identity, and control, using stone, landscape, and collective effort to shape their world. As we linger here, tracing the curves of ancient walls and the shadows they cast at dusk, another question begins to surface. If a community so early in history could conceive, organize, and sustain a fortified system of this scale and precision, what other knowledge, what other structures might still lie undiscovered beneath the earth, waiting, quietly, for someone to notice the pattern? From the sun-scorched fortifications of Los Millares, where concentric walls and meticulously aligned towers testify to the extraordinary precision of Copper Age builders, our journey arcs eastward once again across the Mediterranean to the island of Cyprus. Here, nestled on gently rolling hills overlooking fertile plains, lies Khirokitia, a circular settlement whose architectural sophistication, planning, and enduring stonework continue to fascinate archaeologists and visitors alike. Unlike massive fortresses or monumental ziggurats, Khirokitia communicates its precision through curves, communal layout, and carefully arranged domestic spaces, an intimate yet profoundly deliberate expression of human ingenuity. The Khirokitia circular complex is immediately striking in its simplicity and unity. From above, the settlement forms a series of tightly packed circular houses, each constructed from carefully shaped limestone and mud brick arranged in concentric patterns around narrow streets and shared open spaces. The walls of the dwellings are remarkably uniform, rising in perfect arcs to enclose interior spaces, with entrances carefully oriented and, in some cases, small terraces or steps linking structures to the surrounding terrain. The precision of these circular forms suggests not only aesthetic sensibility, but also a sophisticated understanding of geometry, proportion, and spatial organization. Dating of Khirokitia places its construction between roughly 7,000 and 4,500 BC, making it one of the earliest known organized settlements in the eastern Mediterranean. Despite its Neolithic origins, the settlement exhibits a remarkable degree of urban planning. Houses are consistently sized, streets are deliberately laid out, and communal areas are integrated into the complex with thoughtfulness. This level of precision and planning challenges assumptions about the capabilities of prehistoric communities, demonstrating that human societies could organize space and labor with extraordinary care, even without formalized mathematical systems or written records. Mainstream interpretations view Khirokitia as a proto-urban village, reflecting communal living, social cohesion, and early experimentation in permanent architecture. Its circular houses likely housed extended families, with storage spaces for grain and provisions, hearths for cooking, and terraces that facilitated access and circulation. The concentric arrangement suggests awareness of community dynamics. Central areas may have served as gathering spaces, while peripheral homes provided privacy and protection. Yet the precision and uniformity go beyond functional considerations, hinting at intentionality in design, proportion, and alignment. The architectural precision raises intriguing questions. How did these early builders maintain consistent circular dimensions across dozens of houses? How were entrances and walls aligned to optimize space, ventilation, and sunlight? Were the dimensions chosen for practical purposes alone? Or did symbolic, ritual, or social principles guide the design? The repetition of exact forms, the careful spacing of structures, and the integration of communal spaces suggest knowledge and foresight that surpass mere trial and error. Speculative interpretations further enrich the mystery. Some researchers suggest that the circular arrangement may reflect cosmological or symbolic principles, connecting the inhabitants to natural cycles, the rising and setting sun, or shared ritual practice. Others propose that the compact, concentric design may have facilitated defense, environmental efficiency, or social cohesion, where precise spacing and orientation reinforced community hierarchy and interaction. Could the circles themselves encode knowledge of measurement, proportion, or astronomical alignment, subtly embedded in stone and mud? The techniques of construction also inspire reflection. Stones were carefully selected, shaped, and fitted, while mud brick or clay was used to reinforce walls, maintain stability, and insulate interiors. The regularity of curves, thickness of walls, and alignment of entrances suggest that measurement, observation, and planning were applied consistently across the settlement. How did knowledge of these techniques pass between generations? How were errors corrected or standards maintained without written instruction? The precision of Khirokitia speaks to a deeply ingrained cultural understanding of architecture, geometry, and space. Social implications are equally profound. Constructing dozens of circular houses with uniform dimensions would have required coordinated labor, shared vision, and perhaps designated roles for master builders, artisans, and laborers. How was the planning executed, and who directed the overall layout? How did the inhabitants perceive and interact with their environment, balancing privacy, communal engagement, and ritual significance? The settlement suggests that Neolithic societies were capable of complex organization, planning, and knowledge transfer far earlier than commonly assumed. The relationship of Khirokitia to the surrounding landscape adds another layer to the enigma. Positioned on elevated ground with views of fertile valleys and the nearby coast, the settlement integrates natural features with human design. Open spaces, pathways, and terraces reflect careful adaptation to topography, drainage, and climate, while the circular forms harmonize with the undulating hills. The placement may also have symbolic significance, connecting dwellings to the broader landscape and embedding cultural meaning into the very layout of the village. Even in ruins, the precision and intention of Khirokitia are unmistakable. The uniform circles, measured spaces, and carefully oriented entrances communicate thoughtfulness, planning, and an understanding of human movement and social interaction. While some questions remain, such as the full extent of ritual practice, the symbolic meaning of design, or the methods used to achieve geometric consistency, the site endures as a testament to human ingenuity. Were the circular arrangements primarily functional, symbolic, or a combination of both? Did the builders embed astronomical, ritual, or social knowledge into the settlement's layout? How much of their understanding of geometry, proportion, and urban organization remains hidden within the stones and spaces of Khirokitia? The Khirokitia circular complex stands as a silent witness to the capabilities of prehistoric societies. It demonstrates that precision, foresight, and thoughtful design are not limited to monumental architecture. They can manifest in intimate communal spaces as well. As we walk the paths between the stone circles, imagine the daily lives of those who built and inhabited them, and contemplate the knowledge required to maintain such consistency. One truth becomes clear. Khirokitia, like so many sites we have explored, continues to challenge our assumptions, inviting us to wonder at the depth of human ingenuity and the secrets still waiting to be uncovered in the architecture of the distant past. The camera drifts slowly across a barren limestone ridge in southeastern Anatolia. At first glance, the landscape feels almost empty. Wind-brushed grasses, pale stone, a horizon that seems to hold its breath. Then the ground begins to reveal its scars, shallow cuts, circular depressions, subtle rises in the earth that do not quite feel natural. Beneath this quiet hill, layers of time are stacked one upon another, compressed, hidden, and unresolved. This is Göbekli Tepe, not just the monumental stone circles we see today, but the vast, unseen world beneath them. As we move here from the previous site, the transition is gentle but profound. We leave behind structures that tower above ground, built to be seen, to dominate the landscape. Göbekli Tepe invites a different kind of attention. It asks us to look downward, into the soil itself, where the most unsettling questions may still be buried. The exposed enclosures are already extraordinary. Massive T-shaped pillars, some weighing more than 15 tons, arranged in precise circular and oval formations. Carved into their surfaces are reliefs of animals, foxes, snakes, wild boar, vultures, rendered with a confidence and clarity that feels startling for a site dated to around 9,600 to 8,200 BC. This was a time when, according to conventional models, humans were still hunter-gatherers, living in small, mobile groups. And yet, here stands architecture that demands planning, coordination, symbolism, and a shared vision. But what we see on the surface is only a fraction of the story. Geophysical surveys, ground-penetrating radar, magnetometry, seismic scans, have revealed something quietly astonishing. Beneath the visible enclosures lie many more. Some estimates suggest dozens, possibly even hundreds of stone circles still hidden underground. They overlap, intersect, and repeat similar geometric patterns, as if the hill itself were deliberately constructed layer by layer. This is where Göbekli Tepe becomes less a site and more a puzzle. Mainstream archaeology offers a careful explanation. The hill, researchers say, was not a natural formation, but an artificial one, a tell created over centuries. Enclosures were built, used, and then intentionally backfilled with stone rubble, animal bones, and soil. New structures were then erected on top of the old ones. This cycle repeated again and again, producing the layered subsurface we detect today. But the intentional nature of this burial is what unsettles many observers. These were not abandoned ruins, slowly swallowed by time. They were deliberately covered. The fill material was dense and purposeful, as if sealing something away. Why would a society invest enormous labor to construct monumental stone circles, only to bury them carefully and build anew above them? Some scholars suggest ritual closure. Each enclosure may have had a ceremonial lifespan, after which it was symbolically retired. Others propose social change, shifting beliefs, evolving myths, or new leadership traditions that required fresh sacred spaces. Yet even within these explanations, questions linger. The subsurface layers do not show signs of chaotic reuse. The pillars beneath are often intact, not dismantled. Their carvings were not defaced. They were preserved in darkness, protected, almost archived. As radar images stack one ghostly outline over another, the site begins to resemble something closer to a deliberate archive of knowledge than a simple ceremonial complex. And then there is the matter of precision. The buried enclosures mirror the surface ones in scale and orientation. Some appear aligned along similar axes, suggesting a continuity of planning across generations, possibly across centuries. This implies a long-term transmission of architectural knowledge in a pre-literate society. How was this knowledge preserved? Through oral tradition? Through apprenticeship? Or through something more structured that has left no obvious trace? The deeper layers may be older still. While the exposed structures are dated primarily to the 10th and 9th millennia BC, it remains unclear whether the deepest subsurface elements belong to the same time frame. Excavation proceeds cautiously, and only a small percentage of the site has been uncovered. What lies below the lowest known enclosures has not yet been fully explored. This uncertainty opens the door, quietly, cautiously, to more speculative interpretations. Some researchers outside the academic mainstream propose that Göbekli Tepe represents the remains of a much older tradition, one that predates even the accepted dates. In this view, the subsurface layers could be remnants of an earlier phase of construction, inherited by later groups who no longer fully understood the original purpose, but chose to preserve it through burial rather than destruction. Others suggest that the layering reflects not time, but function. What if the deepest enclosures were never meant to be seen in the same way as those above? What if the hill was designed as a vertical ritual landscape, where meaning intensified with depth? In many ancient cultures, descending into the earth symbolized movement toward the ancestral, the chthonic, the sacred unknown. Could Göbekli Tepe encode a similar worldview, expressed not in text, but in stone and soil? There is also the recurring presence of animal imagery, especially predators and scavengers, found not only on surface pillars, but on fragments retrieved from subsurface fills. Some interpretations link these images to mortuary practices, sky burial rituals, or beliefs about the soul's journey after death. If so, the buried enclosures might represent older cosmological models, replaced or transformed over time. Then there is the geometry. Several subsurface anomalies appear arranged in patterns that are not purely circular. Subtle angular alignments suggest intentional relationships between enclosures across different depths. This raises the possibility that the builders conceived of the site as a whole, not as isolated structures built independently over time. Could Göbekli Tepe be a three-dimensional sacred plan, unfolding vertically rather than horizontally? More speculative theories go further still. Some propose that the buried layers were concealed deliberately in response to a catastrophic event, environmental, social, or symbolic. The end of the last ice age brought dramatic climatic shifts around 9,600 BC. Rising temperatures, changing ecosystems, and the beginnings of agriculture may have altered human relationships with the world. In this view, Göbekli Tepe's burial could mark the end of an era, a conscious closing of a worldview rooted in older ways of understanding nature, animals, and the cosmos. Others point to myths found much later in Mesopotamian traditions, stories of lost ages, buried knowledge, and wisdom passed down from a time before farming, before cities. While no direct connection can be proven, the resonance is difficult to ignore. Yet archaeology urges restraint. There is no evidence of advanced technology hidden beneath the site. No metals, no machines, no inscriptions that speak in clear language. What we have are stones, soil, bones, and patterns, mute but stubbornly resistant to simple explanation. And perhaps that is the heart of the mystery. The subsurface layers of Göbekli Tepe confront us with a civilization or a sequence of cultures that invested immense effort into building something not meant to last in the open air. They chose concealment. They chose continuity through burial. They chose to let future generations uncover their work slowly, fragment by fragment, millennia later. As excavation continues, each layer removed answers one question and raises three more. Was this hill a temple? A gathering place? A memory palace carved into the earth itself? Or something for which we no longer have the conceptual language? Standing above Göbekli Tepe today, it is tempting to imagine the ground beneath as solid, finished, resolved. But it is not. It is stratified thought, layered intention, a conversation across deep time, spoken downward instead of forward. And as we peer into the subsurface maps, those shadowy outlines of circles still waiting in the dark, we are left with an unsettling possibility that the most important chapter of Göbekli Tepe's story has not yet been uncovered. How much of human history is still buried, not erased, not destroyed, but deliberately hidden, waiting for the moment when we finally learn how to listen to what lies beneath our feet. This layered vision may also explain why the burial of the enclosures appears so careful and deliberate. The stones were not toppled in haste, nor were the carvings defaced. Instead, each space seems to have been sealed with intention, as though its power was not meant to vanish, but to be contained. In this sense, burial becomes an act of preservation rather than abandonment, an effort to protect meaning by placing it beyond everyday reach. Seen this way, Göbekli Tepe begins to resemble a landscape of memory rather than a single monument. Each buried layer may represent a moment in a long spiritual conversation, recorded not in writing, but in stone, alignment, and depth. What survives is not an answer, but a structure of questions, one that invites us to look beneath the surface and to consider how much of humanity's earliest thinking may still lie hidden, waiting to be uncovered. Nestled within the serene, undulating landscapes of the Lake District in northern England, Castlerigg Stone Circle sits quietly, its weathered stones bathed in the soft, ethereal light of dawn. From a distance, it appears almost modest, a ring of rough-hewn stones scattered across a grassy plateau. But as one draws closer, the sheer presence of these monoliths becomes undeniable. They rise like ancient sentinels, aligned with such precision that the human mind instinctively searches for a purpose beyond mere randomness. Here, perched on a natural amphitheater of hills and overlooking the sweeping vistas of Skiddaw and Blencathra, one feels the weight of time pressing gently, insistently, against the quiet air. Archaeologists estimate that Castlerigg was constructed around 3200 BC, placing it firmly in the Neolithic era, a period when human societies were transitioning from nomadic lifestyles to settled farming communities. Yet, unlike the simple domestic structures of the time, this circle speaks of something far more ambitious, almost ceremonial. 48 stones remain, some reaching over 2 meters in height, arranged in an elliptical pattern with a circumference exceeding 100 meters. Early surveys suggested a loose arrangement, a rudimentary monument carved by hands that could scarcely imagine the sophisticated engineering feats of later millennia. But as more detailed studies emerged, patterns began to appear, a geometric order, a subtle alignment with the surrounding landscape, and perhaps even a dialogue with the skies above. Castlerig's placement is curious. From the plateau, the surrounding mountains form a natural horizon, a frame within which the sun and the moon trace their annual paths. Observers have noted that certain stones align with sunrise and sunset at the solstices, echoing a celestial awareness that seems remarkably advanced for its time. How did these Neolithic builders, with rudimentary tools, manage to conceive a layout that appears to encode both terrestrial and celestial knowledge? Were they guided purely by careful observation and trial and error, or did they possess an understanding of geometry that modern scholars are only beginning to grasp? The geometric patterns embedded in Castlerigg extend beyond the mere arrangement of stones. Some researchers have mapped the circle and found that its proportions hint at sophisticated mathematical principles. Ellipses, diagonals, and equidistant spacing suggest a deliberate planning process. If one imagines drawing lines connecting the stones, a hidden lattice emerges, one that resonates with both symmetry and irregularity, a paradox of order and natural randomness. These subtle anomalies have sparked debate. Were they the result of practical limitations, errors in construction, or intentional choices meant to encode knowledge in ways that remain obscured to us? But the intrigue deepens when we consider Castlerigg in the broader context of prehistoric Britain. Across the aisles, stone circles, henges, and megalithic monuments appear with remarkable consistency in their orientation and placement. Some align to celestial events, while others follow topographical cues or local geomagnetic features. Castlerigg, however, seems to occupy a unique position. Its elevated location, commanding views, and apparent geometric sophistication suggest it was designed not merely as a ceremonial site, but as a node in a complex network of prehistoric knowledge. Did its builders intend it as a spiritual center, a calendar, or perhaps a map of the surrounding landscape? As one contemplates the circle from the center, the stones themselves seem to assert a quiet authority. Each monolith carries a story, etched in the weathering of millennia. Archaeological surveys have revealed subtle variations in height, weight, and shape, raising questions about selection criteria. Were the largest stones chosen for their symbolic resonance, the smallest for functional symmetry? Could the circle have been constructed in phases, each generation adding, refining, or reconfiguring the layout, gradually evolving a geometric narrative that transcends a single human lifespan? Fringe theories, of course, abound. Some have suggested that Castlerigg's alignment might reflect knowledge of planetary orbits, or that the circle functioned as an observatory for tracking celestial bodies beyond the sun and moon. Others posit that it could have been a locus of energy, a place where natural ley lines intersected, harnessing forces that modern science has yet to explain. Skeptics warn against reading too much into these ideas, pointing out the danger of imposing modern interpretations on prehistoric structures. And yet, when standing amidst the stones on a misty morning, it is difficult not to feel that there is a logic here that stretches beyond the conventional. Could the people of 3200 BC, with no written language, have possessed an intuitive understanding of the cosmos, encoded not in texts but in stone and landscape? The topographical setting of Castlerigg adds another layer of mystery. The circle is perched on a plateau with sweeping views of surrounding fells, yet it is subtly nestled in such a way that the horizon frames key peaks in precise alignment with specific stones. Some scholars argue this was accidental, a coincidence of terrain and construction. But when the mountain peaks are mapped against sunrise and sunset angles, particularly during solstices, the correspondences are striking. Was this an early attempt at merging earth and sky, embedding a cosmic rhythm within the contours of the landscape? Or might there have been cultural or spiritual reasons for these alignments, now lost to history, but once potent with meaning? What makes Castlerigg particularly enigmatic is its relative sophistication compared to its contemporaries. While similar circles exist across Britain, few exhibit the same elliptical form and precise interstone spacing. Could this reflect an isolated experiment in geometry, a local innovation, or does it hint at knowledge transmitted across distant communities, perhaps even across oceans? Some researchers have speculated that megalithic cultures shared information through trade routes or pilgrimages, spreading architectural and astronomical knowledge far beyond what we might assume for the Neolithic era. And yet, no definitive records exist. The circle itself remains the only testimony, silent yet insistently present, inviting speculation but revealing little. The human element cannot be ignored. Imagine the builders, men and women carrying stones weighing tons across uneven terrain, raising them into place without cranes, pulleys, or written instructions. The effort alone implies a social organization capable of coordinating labor on a remarkable scale. But why? Was the construction an expression of devotion, a unifying ritual for a small community, or part of a larger cosmological system understood only by a select few? Each stone, each subtle angular shift, could have held symbolic or practical significance, a language of placement whose grammar we are only beginning to perceive. And yet, for all our measurements, alignments, and mathematical models, Castlerigg remains profoundly mysterious. Modern technology, from aerial surveys to 3D modeling, has revealed astonishing precision and hidden patterns, but each answer seems to spawn new questions. Did the builders intend for their knowledge to endure through millennia, encoded in stone and landscape? Or were these choices practical, spiritual, and aesthetic, layered together in a way that inadvertently created a geometric masterpiece? The more we study the circle, the more it resists simple explanation, teasing the boundaries between history, archaeology, and imagination. Standing there today, one cannot help but feel a quiet reverence. The wind sweeps across the plateau, carrying whispers of distant pasts, and the stones, stoic and immovable, cast long shadows that stretch across the grass. They are witnesses to countless sunrises and sunsets, yet they offer no words. Perhaps the true lesson of Castlerigg lies not in deciphering its geometry or origins, but in confronting the limits of human understanding. It invites contemplation, curiosity, and wonder, leaving us with an open question that echoes across millennia. What other knowledge, encoded in stone and sky, still waits for us to notice? In this sense, Castlerigg is more than a mere relic of Neolithic ambition. It is a mirror reflecting both the ingenuity of our ancestors and the enduring mysteries that surround them. And as we step back from the circle, letting the plateau fade into the distance, we are left with a sense that, for all we know, the story of Castlerigg is far from complete. Perhaps in time, new discoveries will illuminate its purpose. Or perhaps, like the mist that often rolls across its stones, the true meaning will remain elusive, a whisper of a prehistoric mind reaching across the ages, silently inviting us to wonder. As we move from the sprawling exterior of Ggantija, with its towering megaliths silhouetted against the Maltese horizon, we step now into the inner chambers of this enigmatic temple complex. Entering here is like crossing a threshold between the tangible past and something more elusive, a space carved and aligned with a precision that continues to baffle modern observers. The air is cooler, tinged with the faint scent of limestone dust, and the walls, worn smooth by thousands of years of time, seem to hum with a quiet resonance, an echo of rituals long forgotten. The inner chambers of Ggantija, located on the island of Gozo, date back to an extraordinary period, roughly 3,600 to 3,200 BC. These chambers are among the oldest freestanding structures in the world, predating even the pyramids of Egypt. What strikes the observer immediately is the meticulous arrangement of massive stones, some weighing several tons, stacked with an apparent understanding of balance and stability that modern engineering finds difficult to replicate using only the tools available to Neolithic builders. Each chamber is formed by enormous megaliths, arranged in a way that creates a series of interconnected spaces, almost like a labyrinth of memory and ritual. The walls themselves are extraordinary. Many of the stones bear subtle grooves and indentations, which some researchers suggest could have been functional, perhaps for holding offerings or supporting timber structures that no longer survive. Others see a symbolic or astronomical purpose, noting alignments with solstices or lunar cycles that hint at a culture deeply attuned to the sky. How did these early builders, with no metal tools or written language, manage to shape and position stones with such uniformity? The question lingers, soft yet persistent, like the echo of footsteps in an empty hall. Walking through the chambers, one becomes aware of the intentionality behind every choice. The passageways are low, forcing visitors to stoop and move deliberately, creating a sense of introspection or humility. Some chambers are circular, others rectangular, and the overall plan suggests a careful orchestration of space that may have guided ancient rituals. The orientation of the main chamber seems particularly deliberate, facing southeast, catching the light of the rising sun during key times of the year. Could these alignments have been purely ceremonial, or might they have served a more practical purpose, perhaps linked to an early calendar or agricultural cycle? Archaeologists have uncovered evidence of altars, carved stone benches, and platforms within the chambers, indicating that these were not merely shelters or storage spaces. They were places of gathering, of ritual, of human intention pressed into stone. Some of the carvings resemble abstract patterns, while others appear to depict fertility symbols, suggesting that the temple complex may have played a central role in rites related to life, death, and renewal. Yet, despite decades of study, much remains unknown. The exact nature of the ceremonies, the identity of those who performed them, and the cultural meaning of the spaces are matters of speculation, pieced together from fragments of pottery, tools, and the stones themselves. What adds to the intrigue is the sheer scale of the construction. The largest stones in the inner chambers weigh upwards of 50 tons, yet there is no evidence of advanced machinery. The precision with which these stones fit together, often without mortar, raises questions that mainstream explanations struggle to fully answer. Were these people using ingenuity we do not yet understand? Could there have been lost techniques, now vanished, that allowed them to manipulate such colossal blocks with relative ease? Some scholars suggest they may have employed simple yet effective levers, ropes, and wooden rollers. But even with these, the level of control required seems astonishing. Then there is the acoustics of the chambers. Modern experiments with sound within the inner rooms reveal resonances that amplify low-frequency tones. Some researchers propose that this could have been intentional, designed to enhance chanting or drumming during ritual activities. If this is so, it suggests a sophistication in sensory experience far beyond mere practicality, a purposeful blending of architecture and human perception. But was this a conscious design choice, or a happy accident of geometry and stone? The chambers do not answer, remaining silent but compelling. The mysteries of Ggantija extend beyond technique and design. The cultural context of its builders is itself partially obscured by time. The Neolithic people of Malta left no written records. What we know comes primarily from material remains, pottery, figurines, and the temples themselves. Some figurines, often interpreted as fertility idols, hint at a society deeply engaged with life cycles and spiritual symbolism. Yet even here, questions arise. Were these symbols universal within their community, or did they carry meanings understood only by a select few? Did the construction of Ggantija represent a collective act of devotion, a statement of power, or both? Speculative theories, while not universally accepted, add layers to the enigma. Some fringe hypotheses suggest that Ggantij's precision and scale point to influences or knowledge lost to time, or perhaps even contact with civilizations beyond the Mediterranean. Could ancient mariners, traveling from distant shores, have shared techniques for moving and positioning massive stones? Or might the answers lie closer to home, in human ingenuity pushed to extraordinary limits by necessity, ritual, and belief? We are left with these questions, unanswerable yet tantalizing, hovering like the warm Maltese breeze through the temple's silent corridors. Even the name itself, Ggantija, carries a hint of legend. Derived from the Maltese word for giant, It reflects the long-standing awe in which these structures have been held. Local folklore tells of enormous beings, capable of lifting the stones with their bare hands, a poetic reflection of the sheer magnitude of human effort required to create the temple. Whether myth or metaphor, the name emphasizes the scale of wonder these chambers continue to inspire. As sunlight filters through gaps in the megaliths, casting elongated shadows that shift across the inner walls, one cannot help but sense the depth of time held within the stones. Here, thousands of years seem to collapse into a single, silent continuum. The chambers are at once familiar and alien, a testament to human creativity, endurance, and mystery. They invite a meditation on the limits of our understanding, challenging us to reconcile what is known with what can only be imagined. And so, as we leave the inner sanctum of Ggantija, we carry with us more questions than answers. How were these stones moved with such care and precision? What unseen knowledge guided their placement? What rituals unfolded within these walls, and what beliefs fueled the labor that shaped them? The answers remain just out of reach, obscured by the passage of millennia. And perhaps that is the enduring power of Ggantija, not merely in the stones themselves, but in the quiet, persistent mystery they represent. What lies still hidden in the heart of these ancient chambers, waiting for discovery, remains an invitation to wonder. Perched on the windswept northern shores of the island of Papa Westre, in the Orkney archipelago of Scotland, the Knap of Howar rises quietly from the rocky landscape. At first glance, it may appear as little more than a cluster of weathered stone structures, their walls softened by millennia of wind, rain, and relentless sea spray. Yet, for those who approach it with patience, a closer look reveals an extraordinary testament to human ingenuity, a relic from a time when the world seemed both vast and infinitely mysterious. The Knap of Howar is considered the oldest preserved stone house in northern Europe, dating back to around 3700 BC. Its construction is deceptively simple. Low, thick walls of local flagstone form two rectangular buildings, connected by a narrow passage. Inside, remnants of hearths, sleeping platforms, and storage areas hint at the daily lives of its inhabitants. Neolithic farmers who tilled the rocky soil, tended to animals, and navigated the unpredictable North Atlantic waters. Yet, even as archaeologists uncover the mundane details of their existence, an unsettling precision in the structure's design continues to fascinate experts and visitors alike. The stone walls, some over a meter thick, were meticulously fitted without mortar, their flat surfaces aligning almost seamlessly. This architectural accuracy is remarkable, given the tools available at the time: simple stone axes, antler picks, and bone implements. How did these early builders manage to carve, lift, and position such heavy stones with such exacting precision? What methods allowed them to create a dwelling that has withstood the elements for nearly 6 millennia? Some argue that the ingenuity lies purely in human skill honed by generations of experience. Others, however, suggest that there may have been knowledge, lost to history, that enabled such constructions. The layout itself prompts further contemplation. One building appears to have been the main dwelling, with a central hearth suggesting a communal gathering place, while the smaller annex may have served as storage or shelter for animals. The entrance, deliberately low and narrow, forces anyone entering to stoop, a design that conserves heat and protects against the harsh Orkney winds. Such details indicate a sophisticated understanding of environmental adaptation. Yet, even with these practical considerations, the alignment and orientation of the structures invite speculation. Some researchers note that the buildings are positioned with subtle attention to the sun's path, possibly aligning with seasonal markers or ritualistic cycles, hinting at a symbolic dimension to their construction. Inside, the stone platforms where inhabitants once slept and stored food exude an eerie permanence. Dusty remnants of barley and oats, charred fragments of fires, and shards of pottery offer tangible connections to lives long gone. Yet, the precision of the masonry persists as a puzzle. Certain corners meet with nearly perfect right angles, and the walls rise in a measured rhythm as though guided by an unseen hand. For a civilization with no written records and only rudimentary measuring tools, the Knap of Howar represents a level of planning and execution that remains astonishing. Beyond the technical marvel lies a deeper mystery, the social and cultural context of its builders. Who were these people? How did they organize themselves to undertake such enduring projects? Archaeological evidence suggests a small, closely knit community, perhaps only a handful of families. Yet they managed to construct homes that could shelter them comfortably against the harsh northern climate for decades, even centuries. Was there a shared architectural knowledge passed down through generations? A kind of oral tradition encoding structural wisdom? Or could there have been influences from distant cultures, unknown trade routes, or migrations that brought new techniques to these remote shores? Some fringe theories venture further, suggesting that the precision of the Knap of Howar, along with other contemporary megalithic structures across Orkney and beyond, points to a forgotten or hidden knowledge, perhaps a sophistication in engineering or astronomy that mainstream archaeology has yet to fully comprehend. Certain alignments, they argue, could indicate an understanding of solar cycles, lunar phases, or other celestial patterns far beyond what might be expected of a small Neolithic farming community. Could these stone homes have served dual purposes, practical and ritualistic, blending the mundane with the cosmic? Or is this merely the human tendency to project complexity onto the past, to see intention where survival was the primary driver? The location itself intensifies the enigma. Papa Westray is remote, accessible only by boat or treacherous winter skies, and yet these early settlers chose it as home. What compelled them to brave such isolation? Perhaps it was the abundance of marine resources, the rich fishing waters and seabird colonies. Or perhaps the landscape held a spiritual significance, a connection to the land and sea that modern eyes can only guess at. The Knap of Howar, in this light, is more than a dwelling. It is a statement of presence, a human imprint on a vast, untamed environment. As one moves along the rough stone walls, imagining the flicker of fires within, the sound of wind through the narrow entranceways, and the daily rhythms of a vanished community, a sense of continuity emerges. Though the people themselves are long gone, the structure endures, a silent witness to centuries of change. Its survival challenges assumptions about what early humans could achieve and invites reflection on the fragility of knowledge and the passage of time. Yet for all the evidence gathered, questions remain. Why do these buildings show such uniformity in design across disparate Neolithic sites? Could it be simple coincidence, or does it hint at a shared understanding of construction principles lost to history? And beyond the technical mastery, what cultural or spiritual imperatives drove these people to build so carefully, so durably, in such a remote corner of the world? Each stone seems to hold a story that is simultaneously accessible and inscrutable, offering glimpses into human ingenuity while withholding its full meaning. Visitors often remark on the palpable sense of mystery that lingers at Knap of Howar. Standing among the walls, one cannot help but feel a bridge between the known and the unknown, between human determination and the vast sweep of time. How did such simple materials give rise to a structure so enduring? What secrets remain hidden in the alignment of stones or the placement of hearths? The answers may never be fully revealed, and perhaps that is part of the structure's enduring power. It reminds us that human history is not merely a catalog of dates and artifacts, but a landscape of questions, some answered, many still open. In the quiet wind that sweeps across the Orkney coastline, the Knap of Howar stands resolute, a monument to both what we know and what continues to elude understanding. It invites the curious, the thoughtful, and the persistent to ponder its mysteries, to consider the lives of those who shaped it, and to wonder what knowledge, long vanished, once guided their hands. Perhaps the greatest mystery of all is not the building itself, but the depth of human capability and imagination it represents, an enduring whisper from the distant past, urging us to ask, what else lies hidden, waiting to be discovered? Rising dramatically above the city of Cusco in Peru, the fortress complex of Sacsayhuamán commands attention with its massive stone terraces, zigzagging walls, and imposing presence. From a distance, it appears almost sculptural, a monumental dance of limestone blocks fitted together with extraordinary precision. The air here is thin, the wind carrying a whisper of ancient secrets as it sweeps over the jagged stones, stirring questions that have lingered for centuries. Yet beyond the grandeur visible above ground, a hidden world beneath Sacsayhuamán has begun to reveal itself. A labyrinth of subsurface works that challenges our understanding of Incan engineering and leaves room for profound speculation. For centuries, scholars have marveled at the sheer scale and sophistication of the fortress. The walls above ground are constructed from enormous stones, some weighing over 100 tons, meticulously shaped to interlock without mortar. Such craftsmanship alone has prompted admiration and awe, but it is the subsurface structures, the tunnels, chambers, and foundations that deepen the mystery. Archaeologists and explorers have gradually uncovered a network of passages lying beneath the main terraces, hidden from sight for generations. These subterranean works hint at purposes both practical and symbolic, yet their exact function remains elusive. The underground chambers are remarkable not only for their size, but for their precision. Walls of massive stone blocks are perfectly aligned, corners meet at exact right angles, and the surfaces are smoothed to a degree that defies what one might expect from purely manual labor with tools available to the Incas. How were these spaces carved, transported, and assembled with such meticulous care? What inspired their construction? And for whom were they intended? Mainstream archaeological explanations suggest storage, ceremonial functions, or even military applications. But the more one studies these structures, the more questions emerge. One of the most intriguing aspects of Sacsayhuamán's subsurface works is their integration with the above-ground terraces. The engineers of the past created a system that appears to channel water, regulate drainage, and possibly stabilize the massive walls above. Some tunnels seem to run deep enough to intersect bedrock, forming chambers that could have supported the weight of the fortress while remaining concealed. The precision required to align these underground spaces with the monumental walls above is extraordinary, and yet the Incas accomplished it without modern surveying equipment or cranes. What knowledge guided them in shaping the earth beneath their citadel? Beyond practical considerations, there is an aura of the unexplained. Certain chambers possess geometric forms and alignments that hint at astronomical or ritual significance. Could these subsurface spaces have been designed to interact with celestial cycles, marking solstices or equinoxes? Some researchers note that the labyrinthine layout mirrors patterns found in other sacred sites across the Andes, suggesting a symbolic dimension that transcends mere utility. Were these hidden corridors intended to house sacred rituals, to connect the spiritual and material worlds, or perhaps to encode knowledge meant only for a select few? Adding to the intrigue are accounts of echoes, acoustical phenomena, and strange resonances within the tunnels. Visitors and investigators report that certain chambers carry sound in unusual ways, amplifying or dampening it depending on location. Such features could have practical applications for communication or security, yet they also evoke the possibility of intentional design for ceremonial or mystical purposes. Was the Inca understanding of sound and vibration more advanced than modern observers realize? Or are these effects incidental, a happy coincidence of stone and space? Some fringe theories propose even more extraordinary possibilities. Enthusiasts of alternative archaeology suggest that Sacsayhuamán's underground structures may be remnants of an advanced civilization predating the Inca, a culture possessing knowledge of construction, geometry, and perhaps even energy that modern science cannot fully explain. Others speculate about hidden chambers yet undiscovered, tunnels leading far beyond the visible site, or even connections to other ancient centers across the Andes. While evidence for such claims remains sparse and often circumstantial, the precision and scale of the subterranean works leave room for imagination, prompting the question, what did the builders know that we have forgotten? Exploring the site today, one can see the extraordinary effort it must have taken to quarry, transport, and position each massive stone. Some blocks in the subsurface chambers are as carefully shaped and fitted as those above ground, their edges interlocking so tightly that even a thin blade cannot be inserted between them. The logistics alone, moving multi-ton stones along narrow, sometimes sloped passageways without machinery, are staggering. How did the builders coordinate such labor with such accuracy? Did they rely solely on ingenuity, communal effort, and trial and error? Or might there have been techniques lost to history, methods now beyond our comprehension? The geology of the region adds another layer to the enigma. Sacsayhuamán sits atop a complex of bedrock formations, fault lines, and variable stone types. The builders not only had to contend with the challenges of moving enormous stones, but also with ensuring the stability of their subterranean works on uneven and sometimes unstable terrain. The fact that much of this network has survived for centuries, through earthquakes and shifting ground, speaks to an astonishing level of engineering foresight. Was this purely the product of practical necessity, or did it reflect a deeper understanding of forces and materials? Despite the substantial research conducted over the years, large portions of the underground complex remain unexplored. Modern excavation is limited by the risk of destabilizing the terraces above, leaving many areas accessible only to speculation. Satellite imagery, ground-penetrating radar, and digital modeling have revealed anomalies, pockets of unexplained voids, and unusually dense stone formations. But the true extent of the network remains hidden. What stories might these unseen chambers hold? What tools, artifacts, or inscriptions lie buried, waiting to shed light on the people who conceived such an intricate site? Sacsayhuamán's subsurface works also challenge our perception of ancient civilizations in general. The combination of technical mastery, labor coordination, and possibly symbolic or ceremonial intent suggests a society with a sophisticated understanding of both practical engineering and cultural expression. How much of this knowledge was passed down orally, through apprenticeships and tradition, and how much remains lost to time? Could the Incas have inherited methods from earlier cultures in the Andes, blending them with their own innovations to create something that endures not only above ground, but deep within the earth? The mystery deepens when considering the broader landscape. Sacsayhuamán forms part of a constellation of Inca and pre-Inca sites around Cusco, many of which display similar construction precision, alignment, and strategic positioning. Might the subsurface works here connect in ways we have yet to map, forming an integrated network of hidden passageways or ceremonial spaces across the region? Or do these underground chambers represent isolated ingenuity, a singular achievement whose full significance has been obscured by centuries of erosion, conquest, and neglect? Standing atop the terraces, gazing down into the shadows of the underground chambers, one cannot help but feel the presence of a long-vanished intellect. A careful mind, orchestrating stone and space with extraordinary intent. The subsurface works of Sacsayhuamán remind us that the past is never fully accessible. Each discovery is both an answer and a question, a tangible piece of history that simultaneously illuminates and obscures. The fortress is a testament to human capability, to the ambition, patience, and creativity of those who lived here, yet it also humbles us, revealing the limits of what we can know. Perhaps the greatest wonder is not the stones themselves, but the mysteries they embody. For all the research, excavation, and technological investigation, the subsurface works of Sacsayhuamán retain an air of the unknown. What lies hidden beneath the terraces, unseen and untouched for centuries? What knowledge, skill, or purpose has been lost to the passage of time? As the wind whispers through the tunnels and across the walls, the fortress stands as a silent challenge, urging the observer to consider how much more remains to be discovered, and what truths about the ingenuity of the past are still waiting to emerge from the shadows. Rising from the arid plains of southeastern Turkey, the site of Göbekli Tepe presents a vision of ancient ambition etched in stone. The sun casts long shadows across circular enclosures of towering pillars, each carved with enigmatic reliefs of animals and abstract symbols. Among these remarkable features, one stands out with haunting clarity: the Lion Pillar, a monolith that draws both the eye and the imagination, a silent sentinel from an age long before cities, writing, or metal tools. Göbekli Tepe is dated to around 9,600 to 9,100 BC, making it one of the earliest known monumental constructions in human history. The Lion Pillar itself rises several meters high, sculpted from limestone with an artistry that belies the simple tools available to hunter-gatherer societies of the time. Its relief depicts lions in mid-motion, their muscular forms and sharp claws rendered with striking precision. Observers cannot help but be struck by the lifelike quality of the carvings, a frozen energy that seems to capture the spirit of the predator, as if the stone itself remembers the roar that once echoed across the plains. The craftsmanship of the pillar immediately raises questions. How did small bands of hunter-gatherers, with no metal implements and rudimentary stone tools, manage to quarry, transport, and carve such massive stones with such clarity? The placement of the Lion Pillar, alongside other T-shaped pillars arranged in circular enclosures, reflects a level of planning and architectural vision previously thought impossible for a culture without permanent settlements. Each pillar seems deliberate in both orientation and symbolism, suggesting not only practical construction knowledge, but also an understanding of aesthetics and perhaps spiritual significance. Archaeologists have proposed that the enclosures of Göbekli Tepe, including the Lion Pillar, served ritualistic or ceremonial purposes. Some suggest they were gathering places for seasonal ceremonies, rites of passage, or shamanistic practices. The choice of animals carved into the pillars, including lions, snakes, boars, and birds, hints at symbolic associations, potentially linked to cosmology, tribal identity, or myth. Yet the absence of domestic artifacts and everyday living spaces deepens the mystery. Why invest immense labor into structures that do not appear to have been used for ordinary habitation? Could these constructions represent a cognitive leap, an early attempt to encode meaning, memory, and social cohesion into the landscape? The Lion Pillar's design also invites speculation about its possible connections to celestial phenomena. Some researchers have noted alignments between certain enclosures and solar or lunar cycles, suggesting an observational purpose or a symbolic relationship with the cosmos. Did the builders intend the Lion Pillar to mark a seasonal event or a particular celestial alignment? Or was the placement guided by symbolic or ritual imperatives now lost to time? The stone seems to pose more questions than it answers. each detail hinting at knowledge that has vanished along with its creators. Adding to the enigma is the scale of the undertaking. Hundreds of tons of stone were transported and shaped without the wheel or draft animals, suggesting extraordinary communal effort and social organization. How did early humans coordinate such labor-intensive projects without permanent settlements or written records? What methods enabled them to achieve such precision in quarrying and carving? Mainstream explanations lean on social cooperation and iterative skill, yet the sheer magnitude and sophistication of the site continue to provoke deeper contemplation. Fringe theories explore even more extraordinary possibilities. Some suggest that the craftsmanship of the Lion Pillar and Göbekli Tepe as a whole indicates knowledge or techniques lost to history, perhaps inherited from a pre-existing advanced culture. Could there have been architectural or symbolic knowledge that transcended generations, a sophistication not yet understood by modern archaeology? The intricate carvings and the deliberate arrangement of enclosures hint at intentionality, purpose, and an intellectual depth that seems almost anachronistic for the epoch in which the site was built. Moreover, the Lion Pillar raises questions about the role of predator imagery in early human consciousness. Lions, apex predators, symbolize strength, danger, and the untamed aspects of nature. Were the depictions purely symbolic, meant to communicate power or fear? Or did they serve a protective function, a spiritual safeguard for the ceremonial spaces? The realistic portrayal suggests careful observation, and perhaps an intimate understanding of the creatures, implying a level of cognitive and artistic sophistication not often attributed to societies at this stage of human history. Excavations have revealed that the Lion Pillar, along with other monoliths at Göbekli Tepe, was deliberately buried around 8000 BC. The act of burial itself is puzzling. Was it intended as a form of ritual closure, a symbolic gesture marking the end of a cultural phase? Or does it represent an early form of monument preservation, an attempt to shield sacred knowledge from the changing world? The very act of hiding such a monumental work invites reflection on the social and spiritual priorities of these early builders, whose motivations remain largely speculative. The site's location amplifies the mystery. Perched on a ridge above the Heron Plain, it is visible from miles around, yet its construction predates urban settlements by millennia. Why choose this remote and exposed site? Was it dictated by the landscape's natural prominence, the availability of limestone, or by spiritual and cosmological considerations? The careful selection of site, combined with the labor invested in carving and erecting massive pillars like the lion, underscores the extraordinary ambition of a people still living primarily as hunter-gatherers. One cannot ignore the psychological and social implications of creating such monumental structures. Göbekli Tepe suggests a society capable of organizing large-scale cooperative projects, with leadership, planning, and shared belief systems strong enough to mobilize hundreds of individuals over years, perhaps decades. How did they coordinate these efforts without writing or complex tools? How did they transmit knowledge across generations? Each carved lion, each T-shaped pillar, stands as a testament to a collective vision that is simultaneously awe-inspiring and mysterious. As one contemplates the Lion Pillar in its silent enclosure, the interplay of light and shadow along its carved features evokes a sense of time suspended. The stone embodies both permanence and impermanence, preserving the skill and imagination of its creators while simultaneously concealing their intentions. We can study, measure, and theorize, yet the lived experience of those who shaped the pillar remains beyond reach, a shadow of cognition and creativity lost in the mists of prehistory. The Lion Pillar, like the site itself, resists definitive interpretation. Each excavation, each analysis, opens new avenues of inquiry, yet simultaneously deepens the sense of mystery. How did the builders conceive of such structures? What motivated their labor and ingenuity? And what other secrets lie buried beneath the layers of earth and time, waiting to be revealed by patient hands and careful eyes? Standing before the Lion Pillar today, one is confronted with the limits of understanding. It is at once a work of art, a monument, and a riddle carved in stone, inviting both reverence and speculation. Its presence challenges assumptions about the capabilities of early human societies and the nature of their intellectual and spiritual life. The pillar does not demand answers. It poses questions, lingering in the imagination, asking observers to consider the vast unknowns of our shared human past. Perhaps the ultimate wonder is not in solving the enigma of the Lion Pillar, but in acknowledging its existence as evidence of a profound leap in human consciousness. What other monuments, what other knowledge, might have existed long before the dawn of cities and written records? And in contemplating these questions, we are reminded that the story of humanity is far from complete, with each discovery like the Lion Pillar serving as both a clue and a challenge, urging us to continue exploring the deep and mysterious roots of our civilization.